because I am now in charge! Ha! Yes!
Oh, Topher, sorry to say, but there's been a change of plans.
Huh? You? No, it can't be.
Here's a lesson. When it comes to showbiz, never play a player. I knew he had my phone all along.
How'd you know he was calling the producers?
It's what I would have done.
But why the sunglasses and mustache? He couldn't even see you.
Dude, it's called getting into character.
Okay, that part's funny. Topher gets sent home, not even with a helmet. Although so far, only a few characters have actually worn the helmets for whatever reason. As for what I think about this development, yeah, I don't know. I remember liking Topher more as a kid, but honestly, he doesn't do much for me anymore. He's honestly one of the few characters in this cast who's had my opinion of them worsen while working on this video. I remember thinking the whole idea of Topher was really cool as a kid, at least a lot cooler than a fake wizard in a Honey Boo Boo parody in 2014, and because of that, I considered him to be one of the characters I liked more out of the bunch. But ever since then, the whole concept has worn off and all the cracks have begun to show, like the crow's feet on Chris's face without a slow talks treatment. I usually try not to say stuff like this, but I kinda wish he got eliminated a few episodes sooner, so Ella could have stayed longer. Perhaps Ella could have been banned for singing to the lions or Pasta Bear here? You know? Maybe Topher could have stolen the phone earlier? Maybe? I wouldn't say I outright hate Topher, but I'm mostly just unimpressed, especially with the way he goes out. Once again, it's a novel or out-of-the-ordinary character whose story suddenly grinds to a halt. It's not like I expected Topher to actually replace Chris in the show, but it's just a bit much to have him get a call from the alleged producer, and 2 minutes later he's in the canon, especially since it's revealed that Chris knew about it all along. I think it's also exacerbated by the fact that Topher as a whole is so self-contained. I joked about how a lot of the time it feels like he's not even competing in the game, but it really is true in some episodes. I don't think Topher has a single narratively important interaction with another contestant. Off the top of my head, the only thing I can think of is how much he angers Scarlett earlier on in the episode. Otherwise, his entire story arc has to do with Chris, and it just kinda ends. I don't know. Perhaps the nuances of Total Drama Pahkitew Island just elude me. I guess you could argue that Topher sorta got his way. But I've neglected to mention the biggest problem with all of this. Topher said his phone had all 4 bars in this episode when we saw that it maxes out at 5 last episode. Literally unwatchable. Unlike most other episodes of the show, episode 9 opens up at night. The campers are sleeping at night. Chris summons them to their next challenge at night. Jasmine still sleeps in the same tree as Sean for some reason at night. The campers make it to the meeting area where they all find out that the teams have finally merged. Episode 9 feels a bit late for a merge, but I much prefer it here than like episode 6 in the reboot. The campers express frustration at being called all the way over just for news of a merge, but Chris then tells them that they're also invited to a celebratory merge dinner. The campers are skeptical, and they have every right to be given that it's not actually a celebratory merge dinner, it's the next challenge. Chris tells them that the show's lawyers gave them a call and said that feeding the winning team takeout food every few days would count as starvation, so he had to feed them or risk getting sued. But apparently the lawyers didn't specify that it had to be safe to eat, because the entree for the dinner is a bunch of juggy chunks, which is a fictional blend drink of horse meat, mayonnaise, and eggs. Ugh. Apparently back in 2022, a YouTube channel owned by the Fine Bros made a video where people try replications of the most disgusting meals from Total Drama, and juggy chunks were one of them. I've never heard of this YouTube channel with 12 million subscribers until today. It's crazy how much bigger YouTube is compared to when I was a kid. Anyway, everyone is horrified at the idea of eating these juggy chunks except for Sugar. Chris and Chef serve the campers their juggy chunks, and Chris tells the campers that the first to finish will be safe from elimination and given a special role in the second part of the challenge. Chef also whispers that the juggy chunks expired in 1974, but Chris doesn't care. Jasmine is repulsed at the sight and smell, so Sean tries to tell her that she can do it, and she yells at him. I can't say I blame her though. What kind of sicko would do something as wretched as hitting someone with a large stick in a hit someone with a large stick challenge? Ugh. As you might expect, pretty much everyone struggles to eat the juggy chunks except for Sugar, because I don't think she actually has a real human stomach. Honestly, if it were me at the table, I'd just not have any of it at all and hope I don't get voted out. It seems like a better option.
Hey! I just remembered the Juggy Chunks jingle! What's made up horsemeat smells like skunk? Comes in a jug, it's Juggy Chunks! How's your dinner? Mine's just fine! Cause I love the taste of brine! Juggy Chunks is perfect meal for any celebration! frustration. Yummy!
It could use a little tightening up in Melodyne.
Sugar obviously finishes first and wins immunity, and everyone else is allowed to stop drinking their Juggy Chunks. But Sky and Dave continue drinking because Sky has her head so in the game she's not paying attention to the others, and Dave wants to finish it to prove to her he's not a quitter.
To eat that entire cup and not win? Ugh! I have never been this angry before!
Didn't win immunity, but I did beat Sky. This is the perfect time to rub it in a little. Oh yeah, she's gonna fall in love with me right now. Second place to me. Boom! Totally did better than you! How sexy am I now? Bet you wish I was still your boyfriend.
Do you guys remember Trent and Gwen in action? I miss Trent and Gwen in action. I would kill for Dave to count to 9 right now.
You were never my boyfriend, and you will never be my boyfriend, and you have no shot of beating or dating me. Got it?
Look at his face!
Wow, this is very annoying. I am annoyed by this very much.
Chris interrupts the addictive, nail-biting, relatable teen drama that I'm sure we're all thrilled about to announce the next challenge, hide and seek. The campers will be given a head start to hide somewhere on the island while Sugar looks for them. If she finds them before dawn, they have to help her find the others. If not, they get immunity. If Season 1's hide and seek challenge is anything to go off of, this is a good sign.
Dave? You okay?
Yes?
I'm glad you're okay. I thought maybe hearing Sky say you had no chance, none, like zero, never gonna happen, would have depressed you. Nope. Cause that kind of rejection can...
Chris, stop it!
I mean, she was all you cared about.
Please!
To have her stomp on your heart and toss it in the toilet like that, with all of us here, watching it happen. Wow, gotta hurt.
Chris has definitely been on the decline in terms of likability these past few seasons, but I gotta hand it to them. He's more fun with competitors here than he was in All-Stars. I like when he singles them out just to push their buttons.
That's not to say I agree with his sentiment, though. I think Sky was pretty justified in turning Dave down given how he was acting, but I am a bit frustrated with the show for how wishy-washy they've been on Sky's feelings for Dave. I can understand that she might not be as into him as she was when she was dreaming about his muscles 2 episodes ago given his recent behavior, but as I said then, I think the show would have benefited from using some confessional time to keep us in the loop as the audience, especially with how punctual they are about letting us know about every single thing Dave is feeling in every single moment. I feel like I know him well enough to pilot a Jaeger with him. Not that I would want to. I know some people will argue that one of Sky's characteristics is that she's not honest with herself about her feelings, and she consequently isn't going to state her reasoning super clearly, and I think people are a bit too harsh on this scene because they ignore the signs the show gives that she still has some repressed feelings for him, but I think the show overall suffers by not making this more clear. We are talking about one of the most pan-character relationships in the show's history, after all. The campers run to hide, and Dave tries to get Sky's attention, but she ignores him. He runs after her, swearing to win her back.
I don't care what Chris says. Sky says she liked me, and I know she still does. I just need to find out why she's denying it. Denying us!
We cut to Jasmine running through the forest, and she gets stopped by Sean. And she makes some, warrior stance against him and chuffs like a horse. Just pure vitriol here. Sean tells her he found a really good hiding spot and offers it to her to make things right after the whole dock incident, and she accuses him of trying to sabotage her by getting caught and riding her out to Sugar. She just won't cut this poor guy some slack. Also, shout out to Sean for not talking about zombies much these past few episodes. I've actually been enjoying his time on screen as a result.
What? How did I lose her? Sky? Sky! Sky!
Shh! You're gonna get us both caught! Go hide somewhere else!
Well, excuse me for wanting to be near you. I'm very sorry. I'm also sorry that I believed you when you said you liked me.
This whole psycho nice guy Dave thing really has me wondering what the hell Fresh TV was smoking when coming up with this whole character arc. I can't help but imagine some producers-like scenario where they're trying to make the worst total drama season ever, but then they realize halfway through that they accidentally made it decently enjoyable. You can imagine Tom and Jen in the bar scene. So as a last-ditch panicked effort to make the season as unlikable as possible, they decide to go all in on trying to make Dave the most contemptible character in the show's history. Or maybe they just thought it was funny. That's also a possibility.
Hey, I said I liked you, but you didn't want to hear the but. But that's not my fault.
Please let me be your boyfriend.
I need you to hear this. No.
But
No more buts. Just no. Bye, Dave.
It's pretty insane that despite all of this, she's still kind of into him. He really has that Giga Chad swag where he can literally be the most deranged, freakish guy ever, but just a few seconds looking into his eyes will make any woman swoon. Apparently.
wait for... Sky? Sky? Great! Well, I don't need you either! I'm a lone wolf! Ow! 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 Ow!
We finally get a break for the Dave and Sky drama, with Max and Scarlet looking for a hiding place in the forest. Despite the fact that she hates him with every fiber of her being, she chooses to move with him because if Sugar finds both of them, he'll be the easier target. She still has to deal with all the things she doesn't like about Max, though, like his juvenile whining, which is exacerbated by the fact that his stomach is upset from 4-year-old expired meat and eggs.
It's always something with you. Like, boo-hoo, you have life-threatening food poisoning. Get over it.
Dave's shoe ends up hitting Max right in the head, which is honestly pretty respectable. I didn't say it earlier, but that kind of distance for someone like Dave is nuts. He's really got good arms. Max picks up the shoe and throws it back where it came from before following Scarlet back. It's probably not a good idea to move in the direction the shoe came from, though. The shoe hits Sugar right in the head. I guess Max has good arms too. And Dave asks her to throw it back to him from below. She does, knocking him over, and she tags him, but he doesn't care much as he's completely black-pilled. Scarlet and Max continue walking through the forest, with their skin now tinged green due to the food poisoning. Max demands they sit and take another break, and Scarlet is more overtly hostile to him than she's ever been before. But Max's vision begins to fade, and he falls backwards to rest, causing a good, 14 square feet of tree bark to fall down and hit him on the head, revealing what looks like a giant circuit board behind. Scarlet tries to figure out how it works, but she has a lot more trouble than usual and is confused at her lack of comprehension. She then has the genius epiphany that the food she ate earlier may have given her food poisoning. Wow, a deduction worthy of an Agatha Christie novel.
Wait a second. My tummy hurts, and my head hurts, and I ate something yucky earlier. Could it be? Precisely! I got sick!
We have food poisoning.
Explains my wee so tummy wonky.
This is real, Scarlet. The island is being controlled by a main computer. You need to find it and gain control of the island. Focus.
She doesn't end up focusing that well. Dave follows Sugar around the forest looking for the others, and he notices a couple of literal lovebirds chilling out with each other. He starts shouting at the male one, or that's what I assume, the tenets of the newfound black pill incel ideology and the Alvin and the Chipmunks hypothesis, which gives Sugar the idea on how to motivate him. She tells him that he should get back at Sky for turning him down by finding her hiding spot and taking her chance at immunity, which riles him up and he remembers where he last saw her. He leads Sugar back to the bushes where he threw his shoe and howled, and Sky walks away slowly but is quickly tackled and eliminated. That ends up being the last burst of energy Sugar can muster as she and Dave start to grow ill from the Juggy Chunks. We cut back to Scarlet trying to download Instagram on the tree or something when Max projectile vomits all over the panel, causing it to short circuit. I imagine if she weren't so sick she'd be furious, but the only thing she can feel is exhaustion. It starts to rain, and Scarlet and Max run into Sugar and the others, with everyone now covered in mud. And given that we haven't seen Sean in a while, I think we can all see where this joke is going. Jasmine is seen hiding in a cave, somehow not completely green yet, and Sugar and the others start chasing her. Sean is seen on top of a tree, hoping to wait out the last few minutes before sunrise without getting caught. However, he notices Jasmine running below him being pursued by the not zombies and immediately swoops in to rescue her. He tries to lift her up but fails to do so given she's like 7 feet tall, and she tells him she doesn't have the energy to keep running. He tells her she can still climb, which is kind of confusing because climbing is much more physically intensive than running, but whatever. The two of them begin to climb the tree, and the show makes it crystal clear that Jasmine's feelings for Sean have been rekindled. The not zombies follow them up the tree, which is really nuts given that the only reason they have to catch Jasmine and Sean is to increase the amount of other candidates for elimination. It's a decent reason, but climbing a tree with life-threatening food poisoning is a big ask. Jasmine and Sean make it to the top with nowhere else to go. So Sean tells Jasmine he believes she can beat the zombies and makes the ultimate sacrifice. He jumps down and knocks everyone off the tree with him, leaving Jasmine as the only camper who hasn't been caught. Chris immediately declares the challenge over, despite the sun not coming out yet, and Jasmine wins immunity alongside Sugar. He also tells the campers that they're all going to have their stomachs pumped, which, not for nothing, is kind of nice of him. Medical attention is not something Total Drama contestants get much these days. We cut to the elimination, which I assume took place the following evening, and the last marshmallow is due to go to either Dave or Sky. Sky is surprised by this development, and Chris tells that it was likely because of how hard she rejected Dave, which I kind of doubt because it's not like anyone looked that disturbed.
If I have no chance with Sky, I don't want to be here. I campaigned to get myself voted into the canon. I even made buttons.
Finally, a cause I can get behind.
Dave ends up being eliminated by 1 vote, only because he voted for himself. Interestingly, this is the only post-merge challenge where there's an actual standard voting elimination. Fun fact, I'm really glad he's gone. I liked Dave a good amount for the early episodes, especially as a kid, given he seemed to be the only character who was annoyed by whom I found to be the most annoying characters in the show's history. Seriously, I didn't know anyone who was a big Total Drama fan when this show came out. If they had played characters like Beardo, Ella, and Leonard totally straight without acknowledging how out of place they were in the Total Drama world as we knew it, I think the lack of external validation would have driven me crazy. However, this back and forth with Sky is pretty irksome to me, and to be honest, I feel like I'm not as bothered by it as other people. Honestly, while making this video, I found a few things that I kind of like about it, even in this episode. I'm not super keen on his bragging to Sky, but there were a few moments of his patheticness that were kind of fun, but there also were several that weren't. I jokingly compare this to Gwen and Trent in action, but honestly there are some key differences. I definitely don't think Dave is out of character in how desperate and pathetic he gets. From the start of the season, they made it pretty clear that despite trying to be relatively normal, he was overly fixated on Sky and had a lot of deep-seated neuroses.
OMG, is there anyone normal here?
Hi, I'm normal.
Oh cool, can I fuck you?
That's not normal.
Dave's crash out isn't a complete swing in temperament like what you had with Trent. I also don't think Dave's pathetic attempt at making Sky want him is somehow a betrayal of his previous character traits. He doesn't exactly have a track record of passing his speech checks. There's like one moment in the entirety of his time on screen where he said something even remotely charismatic.
I think I'll go it alone. It's nothing personal, Dave. It's just easier to be silent when you're by yourself.
Are you saying you find talking to me just too tempting?
Ooh, damn, that even made me blush. Otherwise, he's awful at talking to her. So much so that I think it's easy for people watching this show for the first time to forget that she's actually supposed to still have feelings for him even after the Juggy Chunks incident. Suffice to say, he's going off looks and looks alone. There's also a big sting when you think about the fact that this is like one of the biggest arcs Fresh TV cooked up for us. I honestly could see this arc being a lot more digestible if it was something on the side as opposed to one of the 2 most pivotal stories here. But because Dave has so much narrative focus, the final few episodes of Pacateo Island feel really hollow without him. There's like nothing for Sky to do now, other than be mildly friendly with Sean and Jasmine.
And that's probably why they bring him back, because Dave is coming back. Yippee!
Anyway, regarding the other Pacateo power couple, after Dave walks off, Jasmine thanks Sean for saving her and tells him that she was wrong about him. She even kisses him on the cheek. It's kinda cute. I definitely have more good feelings about it than bad, but I still think the conflict and relationship between these two leaves a bit to be desired writing-wise, especially with how much they try and milk out of one situation. Obviously, I don't condone hitting people, and he probably hit her harder than he would have otherwise, but I think the show has had better reasons for creating friction between two characters. I've also historically disliked how hostile Jasmine suddenly gets about the whole thing, but that's in large part because I always assumed her attitude is meant to be seen as righteous indignation. Nowadays, I interpret it more as her having trust issues due to her backstory of struggling to make friends, along with a newfound fear of letting emotions get in the way of $1 million. And although you can argue it's a bit headcanon-y, when it's seen through that lens, I find it considerably more palatable.
That being said, and I know I'm singing the same tune, I dislike how bare bones the relationship writing is in these 13 episode seasons. You can pretty accurately summarize the entire arc between these two in like 3 sentences. A guy and a girl bond and develop feelings for each other over a mutual interest in the outdoors. The girl gets mad at the guy after he hits her too hard in a competition they were in. The guy makes it up to her by throwing a challenge in her name later on. And that's it. You're all caught up. It makes you wonder how these videos end up being so long.
Anyway, Chris delivers the episode's outro like usual, but then we see the tree circuitry from earlier on in the episode catch on fire. Suddenly, it starts snowing and the island landscape starts changing, which freaks everybody out. The episode then ends. We don't usually get cliffhangers like that. Interesting. I'm hyping this up way more than I should. Episode 10 starts seemingly minutes after episode 9, with the island now going haywire. The final 6, fearing for their lives, demand to know what's going on, and although Chris tries to deny anything happening at first, he quickly relents. He reveals a piece of information that they've been building up for a while now. We've seen it hinted at with objects seeming to move of their own accord, bizarre hidden passageways strewn around the island, and flora and fauna that shouldn't be anywhere near Western Canada. But it's finally revealed here. The island is being controlled by the dog from Silent Hill 2. Chris ensures the campers that it's all under control and it should be fixed soon. And that, of course, leads to an unfortunately timed monitor to pop out of the ground announcing the island's self-destruct sequence has been activated. Mira is taking us down with her.
Happy birthday, Samus! Self-destruct activated.
Chris shows a map of the island on his banana pad. Doesn't have the same ring as pear pad, to be honest, and quickly comes up with the challenge. Split into teams of 2 and infiltrate the island's underground control room to cancel the self-destruct sequence. Scarlet gasps and asks to borrow the banana pad. Surprisingly, Chris lets her.
The fool! He just handed me the key to the island! It's all mine!
Oh shit, we forgot to find a proper antagonist this season.
Well, look around, there's gotta be a villain somewhere.
How about Scarlet?
Wait, what?
The campers are terrified, understandably, about their present situation and bombard Chris with questions on why an artificial island needs a self-destruct button and why they don't try to escape, but he ignores them and gets into his helicopter, which apparently launched and made its way to him in like 4 canon minutes.
Don't mistake my lack of commentary on Chris leaving the campers for dead as saying it doesn't bother me. It bothers me, but I'll get to it later.
Sean and Jasmine and Scarlet and Max dart off to their, entrances, I guess, leaving Sugar and Sky behind. They kinda gloss over how every camper is somehow supposed to find their respective entrance into the underground, but it's not a big deal. Sean and Jasmine head over the pond, and we see them hurtle through a variety of the island's newfound dangers. It's definitely cute seeing them work together like this, especially after they've been dangled in our faces for the past 9 episodes. Right before they jump into the pond, they find out that it is inhabited by sharks. Sean is intimidated, but Jasmine tells him that they're not actually that dangerous, and if one gets too close, you just bop it on the nose. She learned that in Muskrat Boys. It vanquishes all foes. Well, actually it doesn't, because a shark makes its way to them and Jasmine punches it, but all it does is rile it up even further. Fortunately, Sean gets so scared he pees his pants, and the smell of the pee grosses the shark out and it leaves them alone. Jasmine doesn't care though. The pee in her face doesn't seem to bother her. They open a hatch and find themselves in a metal corridor. Meanwhile, the other teams head off to find their own ways into the control area, although it's definitely less flashy. Sugar and Sky make their way through one of the retracting tree openings, and Scarlet and Max find an entrance literally under a rock. They make a joke where Max asks which rock the entrance is under, and Scarlet sarcastically tells him to ask them. So he does. Swing and a miss for me. Anyway, I think it's a good time now to really talk about the fact that this entire island seems to be some robotic sci-fi aperture science hellscape. From my experience, it's a split opinion among fans, and I can see why. Although they've been hinting at it throughout the season, it's a gutsy decision that I imagine wasn't made totally lightly. Actually, never mind. It probably was made pretty lightly. I get the impression a lot of the decisions in this season were made pretty lightly. It's still gutsy though, especially because they had the daring idea to keep it hidden for as long as they have.
So you might be wondering where I stand in this debate. Are my feelings positive? Are they negative? Honestly, I'm leaning pretty positive on it.
I mentioned earlier in the video that there are a lot of things I would complain about in Pahkitew Island as a kid that I basically only complained about because I like trashing on Pahkitew Island. And the island being artificial is a perfect example of that. I would daydream about ranting about all the things that made me furious about Pahkitew that still bother me to this day, but I'd also tack on the whole, by the way, the artificial island? What were these writers thinking? Aside for a little flavor. Just for a little spice. If you had asked my younger self why he disliked the artificial island idea so much, he probably would have brought up how unrealistic it is in the world of total drama. What started as a relatively down-to-earth animated comedy about teenagers now has its characters navigating an underground facility equipped with traps and killer robots to stop it from blowing up. It's definitely a change in setting.
Even nowadays, I'm not the biggest fan of sci-fi or fantasy elements in total drama. But, you know, this kind of stuff has been baked into the total drama cake since 2007.
Obviously, going backwards, we have all the toxic waste stuff in Revenge, which, frankly to me, is a lot more egregious than the robots. But we had aliens confirmed before in World Tour. Aliens that could clone Cody. They even put the aliens on late night TV. But what about Total Drama Island in action? Surely those seasons are more grounded. Well, yes, kind of. But they still have things like Sasquatch, and it's at least very much hinted that the Total Drama producers somehow have access to dinosaurs. Like, pterodactyls. Somehow.
You know, I've clowned on Sean for all of his zombie conspiracy theories, but honestly, a zombie apocalypse doesn't seem too far-fetched for the total drama world.
Another criticism I've seen is that the whole artificial island concept runs in opposition to the whole all-natural tribal Cree vibe they also went for here. And that's one I kinda see, but also not really. Chris had a whole monologue about how this was a wild, untamed island in episode 1, but all that actually meant was that the teams were in charge of finding their own shelters and food. I like that, but that's as novel as this season gets with a great outdoor shtick. They certainly weren't making challenges to fit that theme. Everything we've gotten so far is pretty meat and potatoes total drama. Chris did make the point that the wildlife of the island is more dangerous than it was on Wawanakwa, but all that really materialized out of that was a moose stampede. The wildlife hasn't been shown to be that much more vicious, at least before now, since we've now come to know that at least a good amount of the animals are robots that can breathe fire and stuff. Besides that, it's not markedly different from Wawanakwa outside of the small visual change of a different kind of forest, which, I'll concede, looks pretty nice. I like the natural beauty of Pahkitew Island, fake as it may be. It's like the Scottish Highlands. It's only pretty because of human development. As for the Cree stuff, I don't think it was ever much of a guiding principle for the direction Fresh TV meant to take with this season. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't mean to turn this into a discussion about how representation should or shouldn't be done, but the Cree influence on the show only manifests in like 3 proper nouns, a Cree character, and a few jokes about the underground caves being a subject of Cree folklore when they obviously weren't. None of this is to say that I wouldn't have liked a more Survivor-esque set of challenges for Pahkitew Island. Honestly, I think that would have been pretty awesome. But since the show never really takes that concept very far to begin with, I don't think the artificial island gimmick actually gets in the way of anything in practice. Though, I guess, that's my opinion and stuff.
The point is, I liked the idea of this whole artificial island. The way they built it up was fascinating, especially for a show that historically, I've not found to be very good at subverting expectations.
It makes me really curious if and how the modularity of the island has affected the challenges up to this point. For example, I wanted to tease the show earlier during the cave episode because Team Musquash conveniently was the only team to not get any night vision goggles, but also happened to get natural lighting in the segments of the cave that they discovered. It seems a little too lucky. But if you imagine that Chris can swap the caverns around like the area blocks in the Johto remake Safari Zone, it makes it seem pretty plausible. Anyway, the survivalist soulmates head through the corridors and Chris pops up from a monitor complaining about the broken cappuccino machine on his helicopter. He tells the two of them that in order to make it further into the facility, they'll have to make it through a laser beam detection system. So Sean and Jasmine tap in, with some Mission Impossible style music playing in the background. However, they lock eyes at one moment and can't help but kiss each other, which gets them detected. Fortunately, it's the sound and alarm laser system and not the death ray laser system. Getting caught alerts the security system, which takes control of Pacateo Island and attacks the city, leaving the mayor to give Squidward community service for the damage he caused. It also summons a bunch of robotic animals that chase them down the hall. Jasmine almost loses her hat in the process, which reveals her really flat head, but fortunately she gets it back. Sugar and Sky end up in a similar predicament when they make their way underground, as they get chased through a gear chamber by a fire-breathing kitten robot. Whoa, the cute little kitten is actually a robot that breathes fire? That's crazy, dude. I didn't see that coming at all. Chris also states here that originally the show used real animals, but because of the pressure from animal rights activists, he opted to use robots instead. I'm not sure if all animals on the island are meant to be animatronic though. I'm gonna guess no, just because Sugar stuck her hand really deep down that monkey a few episodes ago. Suffice to say, she would know if its internals are just a bunch of nuts and bolts, though she's also a comedically stupid character, so they could explain that away if they wanted to. Max and Scarlet fall into the facility from a giant tube, and Chris comes up on the monitor to tell them they are exactly outside of the control room, which is thought-provoking. I don't know why he didn't tell them all to enter through the rocks if it was literally this easy to make it there. Either he doesn't know how his island actually works, which wouldn't make a lot of sense, or he's just making things more difficult for the players even when they're at risk of dying, which I think is more likely the canon explanation. He literally says in this episode that he intends to use the footage of their infiltration for the show regardless if they die or not.
Step aside, sidekick. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Nope. How about 3, 2, 1?
This one's gonna be for fun. There's a lot of shocks in season 6.
Scarlet encourages Max to keep guessing the passcode because the lock should eventually short out or kill him. And it does. Short out, I mean. Max is still alive.
Yes! Welcome, Chris McLean.
The island is mine! Mine!
Enough nonsense, sidekick. Step away.
I am not your sidekick!
Oh. Okay.
This is the real me, the Scarlet that I've kept hidden until now. Biding my time, waiting to strike. I am evil!
Apparently Evil dresses up like an old librarian. Seriously, like, this is a cool idea for a twist and all, but Scarlet looks goofy like this. Honestly, I know it wouldn't make much sense, but I would have really liked her to have some sort of wardrobe change here somehow. Honestly, the Pacateo Island cast is full of weird character designs, especially the color choice. The characters' clothes are oddly washed out in comparison to the first 2 gens. It's not really a big deal though, I've just been waiting to bring up that very minor criticism for 11 years. The hair is also kind of weird, but I like the idea of it. And it's really funny to me that the whole twist about what Scarlet's hair looks like when she lets it down is identical to the villain from Ace Attorney Spirit of Justice. In order to chase Max out of the room, Scarlet presses a button and summons Scuba Bear, who quickly rips off his external covering, revealing he is also an animatronic, and he chases Max so he could hopefully stuff him in a mascot suit. Chris comes up on the monitor to talk to Scarlet, and he tells her that she can win the challenge by disarming the self-destruct, but she tells him she'll only do it if he hands her the million. Chris tells her he thinks she's bluffing, and also that she'd blow up with the rest of the island, but she notes that there's an escape pod, apparently, and launches a bunch of tree missiles at him. It's pretty respectable that she knows how all of this works given she entered the control room a minute ago.
Chef! We've got an emergency! The foamy thing on the coffee machine won't work at all now! Also, Scarlet's gone rogue and is gonna blow up the island. We gotta warn the others. As soon as the foamy thing is working properly again.
Sugar and Sky run into Jasmine and Sean after falling into a pipe or something off screen, and the 4 of them catch up before finding out they have only 10 minutes before the island explodes. Scarlet pops in through a monitor but conceals her face, and tells them that Chris lied about the self-destruct being deactivated in the control room, and provides them a map to the real deactivation room. The gang makes its way to the room, and they do not find a means of stopping the explosion. Instead, they find a whole bunch of Chris robots who activate and attack them.
Drama! 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 Drama!
Sure. Why not?
The three girls huddle up in fear and Jasmine compares the robots to a bunch of zombies, which awakens Sean's hidden perk, or not so hidden perk, and he solo kills all the Chris bots in a phobia-fueled frenzy.
Guys, you're not gonna believe this! Hey! What did you do to my promo bots?
Promo bots?
How do you think I did the promotion tours for the show? You think I went to all those malls myself?
Kind of violent for promo bots.
They gotta defend themselves. Do you have any idea what the average Total Drama fan is like? Do you?
The campers argue with Chris due to his lack of help throughout this whole situation, and Max shows up being chased by the animatronic formerly known as Scuba Bear. Sean literally just kills it in one blow by throwing one of the robot arms at it.
Friends, family, everyone, I would like to thank you all for joining us here today. I believe that a ceremony like this should not be a mourning of death, but instead a celebration of life. Scuba Bear died peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by his family and several mistresses.
Chris informs the campers that Scarlet is refusing to stop the island from exploding unless he gives the $1 million, which he refuses to do, so the five of them run to the actual control room, presumably with Max's direction, and they knock on Scarlet's door to try and reason with her.
Attention, vermin. Either Chris brings me the $1 million, or everyone gets eliminated. Permanently. Chris, she won't budge.
You're right. Chef, move us to a safe distance. She's gonna blow.
What? You can't just let us die.
Yeah. You all signed a release. $1 million is a lot of cash.
And she's not a signature.
Zip it! Just wanted to do that one last time. Later, guys.
No, Chris, don't fall off! Don't fall off! No!
I don't like this. I really don't like this. I miss the old Chris. He used to be a lot more dynamic of a character, and this gradual shift since World Tour and him becoming more and more sociopathic is such a downer to watch.
I'm not gonna pretend that they haven't occasionally hit with some of the comedy regarding his utter disregard for human life. I kinda like the whole joke earlier where he panics about the broken coffee machine. But the constant lines about how much Chris hates the competitors and likes seeing them get hurt got really annoying really fast. In general, I think Chris McClane was a much more fun character when he seemed to somewhat care about the contestants in his own messed up way. Everyone points to the scenes like when he genuinely starts freaking out at Gwen facing the real serial killer, or when the teams nearly drown in the fake submarines, and I'm gonna point at those too. I love those scenes. Chris's portrayal in Hook, Line, and Screamer is probably one of my favorites in the whole series. His occasional moments of camaraderie with the campers, especially in that episode, made him so much more fun and likable than he is now, where his only prevailing character trait is sadism. Even the other traits that are bad about him, like his vanity, have been diluted by the constant, I wanna see the campers get hurt shtick. I've always loved the scene where he and the eliminated contestants are all gathered up watching Duncan face Chef on the monitor. He felt a lot more human back then. It's not like he still wasn't a total pompous schmuck, but he had a certain dimension to him that gave him some extra zing. Seriously, I think my life is measurably better because I have seen the Gwen, he's the real escaped psycho killer with a chainsaw on a hook unison line. It was always a lovely change of pace when even he got freaked out by stuff going on, and it overall made him more enjoyable as a character. Also, I'm totally double dipping at the Chinampa. This isn't really a big deal, but I loved how in season 1 especially, Chris would often just have this really stupid smile on by default. I genuinely think that made such an impression on me as a little kid that I would get kind of confused when the campers were mad at him. I was just smitten by his ersatz charm. Credit where it's due, other than the whole leaving the cast for dead thing, I enjoy Chris more in Pocketale than I did All Stars. Honestly, even with the leaving the characters for dead, I probably still like him a bit more this season just because he interacts with the campers in more unique ways with more unique one-liners, which kinda goes against the prevailing criticism of him getting worse each season.
In case you don't know, I'm not the only person who dislikes how Chris McClane changed over time. It's probably one of the show's biggest criticisms among dedicated fans, especially fans who are a bit more sensitive to this kind of thing, which is valid. I've said before that permanent damage to characters like Ezekiel becoming feral or Dakota becoming a mutant was a bit uncomfortable for me as a kid, so I'm sympathetic to people who say Chris here made their stomach churn.
I was never made uncomfortable about this scene. I think by this point of me watching the show, I was kind of too over it to care, but a lot of people were. Add on to that, the fact that incessant cruelty for humor in cartoons was a trope that people were sick of at this time, at least on the DeviantArt American corners of the internet I was a part of, and you really have a recipe for disaster. The scene may have not made me viscerally uncomfortable, but it still got on my nerves, just because it was another reminder of how much the show had changed in a way that wasn't to my taste. And I still feel that way now, although less so. But as I said, I still probably like Chris here more than I do in All Stars. He felt like he was written on autopilot there. Blah, 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 you're gonna die, blah, 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 paycheck. Whatever.
Aha! I have an idea! Quick! Someone think of something!
That's your idea? Shh! No, he's right. What can we do? Chris isn't coming. No Chris means... That's it. I'll be right back.
Right here! Now!
So, you finally came to your senses.
I'm Toto dead.
It was just a matter of time before I knew you'd decide to pay up.
Ha! I tricked you! Now who's more evil?
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? After all of this setting up, all of this tension, all of this foreshadowing, Max takes credit for Sky's idea? Sky was the only one who thought of it! Scarlet walks up to Max, hissing like a snake for some reason, but Sugar quickly goes full important character mode and beats the crap out of her.
Nice job, Sugar!
Self-destruct in 10, 9, 8,
What do I do? Control, delete?
4, 3, 2, 1.
So that was Total Drama Pacateo Island. A bit of a rocky start, but it got pretty hectic towards the end. It's a shame it was so short, but, you know, that's life, I guess. No, I'm just kidding. The whole Control-Alt-Delete thing doesn't make that much sense, but it still stops the island from exploding. Scarlet's plan was foiled. Honestly, she was really down for it. She literally smiled when the island was about to explode. She was ready to get rich or die trying. Chris comes on the monitor to say goodbye to all the campers before they die, but he finds out that they actually managed to defeat Scarlet, because I guess somehow, despite being a super genius, a broken robot mumbling nonsense is a dead ringer to her. The campers chastise Chris for abandoning them, and Max gets shocked by the Chris head he used, which causes him to throw it at the screen and break the monitor in the control room. I don't know how that causes the computer in the helicopter to fry, but whatever. The damage causes the island to go on the fritz again, leaving it looking like Shoto from My Hero Academia. If you flip him.
I know I normally hand these out to those who are not being eliminated, but today I feel a special ceremony is called for. You are so eliminated. You're more eliminated than anyone's ever been eliminated. Even that beatbox guy. The whole island's a freak show.
You're gonna speak ill of the dead like that? Really low, Chris.
Max, overjoyed at the fall of his usurping sidekick, cheers at her dismissal, but Chris says that he's sick of all the evil mumbo-jumbo after what just occurred and kicks him off the island too. They're shot out of the cannon, never to be seen again.
And I gotta say, I'm definitely not the biggest fan of how the episode ends.
Scarlet immediately losing to such a simple diversion, the same diversion that Chef used to get the campers to ruin Mount Chrismore, is very silly. Actually, a key difference is that at least Chef tried the sentence mixing Isaac Hayes method. The Robo-Chris just said nonsense. She's supposed to be brilliant, especially compared to the rest of this cast, most of whom probably don't even know their times tables. It's approaching button tier levels of goofy conflict resolution. That's not even mentioning that Scarlet's plan is really stupid in the first place. It should go without saying that even if she does get the $1 million, she would obviously go to prison and the money would be confiscated. Honestly, she has much better odds just winning this challenge, getting immunity, and making it to the finale. I'm curious why she even tried to get on the show, but frankly, and I say this with love, I don't think anyone involved thought about it that much. And to be fair, I don't think her plan really needed to be that good. Honestly, if Scarlet was a real-life evil genius, she would just run crypto scams or leave Canada and price hike pharmaceuticals or something. The worst she'd get is a slap on the wrist, as opposed to life in prison.
Jokes aside, it's just a bit of a shame seeing another big plot thread of this season ending so abruptly with basically no payoff whatsoever. Especially because, as I said, they worked their way toward the whole evil Scarlet reveal super well. I said this already, but in a season where you can read all the characters like they're the very hungry caterpillar, having a character whose motivations were drip-fed over time was such a breath of fresh air. Even 7th grade Switchy saw this episode when it first came out and was like, okay, Fresh TV, okay, you got me. I wasn't familiar with your game.
Honestly, if it were up to me, I would have made it so that Scarlet is able to actually trigger the self-destruct sequence, but it's revealed that the sequence is fake, and Chris literally just made the whole challenge up to capitalize on the technical difficulties that the island was having. You still would have had the life or death stakes, and although the ending would still be kinda anticlimactic, I would definitely prefer it over the Chris robot plan. The jokes that could be made there are also a lot more fun to me personally. I would have loved Chris to have made a joke at Scarlet's expense about how dumb the whole plan was because she obviously would have gotten caught, and $1 million isn't enough money to justify killing 5 people on camera. If they wanted to play into the whole Bond villain stupidity thing with Scarlet, I would have liked that more than just, oh cool, Chris McClane made his way underground for some reason. He also isn't speaking to me in complete sentences. I guess I should unlock the door. It also would have made Chris seem less cutthroat than he does otherwise, as he always knew the island would never actually explode.
Regardless, I still think this is one of the better episodes, and even with the climax being kind of a dud, Scarlet's arc throughout this season is by far the most interesting to me. I genuinely respect the effort put in, and Scarlet is one of my favorite characters here. Even Max did more good than harm, I think. I didn't like him that much at first, but I think he gets in his groove towards the middle few episodes. And honestly, although I find a lot of the evil stuff to be kind of derivative and second rate, they at least have a lot of fun with it. So, all that remains is one question. Why is Sugar still here? What kind of goofy Final Four is this? Are you serious?
Well, I guess it's not that bad. Sean, Jasmine, and Sky are all really competent players, and Sugar kinda has stupid idiot powers. But I'll be honest, I was not expecting Sugar to make it this far into the game on my first viewing. I also was not hoping Sugar would make it this far into the game on my first viewing. I think I'm gonna start cutting Sugar out of my diet after finishing this video. Anyway, episode 11 starts with the interns cleaning up the island after last episode's Shiverburn Galaxy debacle, and Sky wakes up to the sound of Sugar eating a cabbage. Sugar lives in the treehouse now, by the way. Sky asks Sugar why she's eating a whole cabbage, and she says that she's constipated and trying to host her own elimination ceremony. It's kind of a running joke this episode. I'm not exactly thrilled by it, but whatever. Sky obviously doesn't like Sugar that much, but she asks Sugar if they could form an alliance given that Sean and Jasmine are dating again will obviously work together. Sugar agrees, but only if Sky is willing to play dirty and cheat. Sky likes to play fair though, she's brought that up a few times, so Sugar agrees to not be underhanded during the challenge. But she was lying! It was a lie to ally with someone during the competition, because Sugar is apparently the closest thing we have to a traditional total drama villain this season. Like seriously, she and Scarlet are the only characters in this cast who actually try to deceive others.
Wow, did you think of this all on your own?
Yeah. Oh wait, that's like really subtle but really funny. He got the idea from Dave. I'll happily deposit a coin in the piggy bank for that.
Over their romantic morning picnic, Jasmine brings up to Sean that she trusts him right now as a potential ally, but recognizes that there's a good chance the two of them may be facing off against each other in the finale. She's right, honestly. We've had 2 couple finales at this point. She proposes the idea that if it comes to that, they'll both try their best and split the winnings 50-50. Or at least that's what I assume they meant, because she uses the term play for keeps, which I feel like is the exact opposite of playing to split the money. I don't know. Sean reluctantly says yes and offers her a pomegranate to lower her HP EV, but he immediately teleports to the confessional to say that he doesn't want to split the money, as he needs the entire $1 million to build his dream zombie-proof bunker. The final 4 are summoned to Mount McLean for the next challenge, Mount Everfast. It's just a race up a mountain. It's pretty simple. The camper who makes last place gets immediately eliminated, meaning that there will be no vote tonight. I assume they did that because any sensible vote tonight would result in a tiebreaker with the 2-on-2 alliance, but to be fair, I've never been a big fan of voting in the final 4. It makes a bit more sense for it to be a sudden death challenge.
Fun fact, or kinda not so fun fact,
This episode's title is Skyfall, another big 2014 reminder, but it was originally going to be called Breakback Mountain, an obvious pun on Brokeback Mountain. I think they decided against it because they thought it would be controversial or something due to the adult themes of the film, but I don't know for sure. Sean and Jasmine immediately take the lead in the challenge owing to their athletic prowess, with Sky close behind. Her desire to pair up with Sugar is immediately tested because Sugar is way in last place, and with this episode having a low elimination, Sky has a pretty good reason to call it off and just get as far as she can. But I suppose being in the final 3 with Sean and Jasmine wouldn't be that much more advantageous. In the confessional, Sky tells us her ideal use of the prize money. If she wins, she'll invest it in rigorous Olympic training. It's a fun detail in this episode. Each of the final 4 will eventually reveal their plans for the prize money. I'll bring up the other plans when they come up. Sugar continues to literally hold Sky down until Chris unleashes a swarm of crocodiles to chase them. The pair scrambles up some rock formations, then leaps onto a monitor to gain some distance. Fortunately, a goat appears just in time, distracting the crocs and leading them away. Wow guys, it's like if Bratty was chasing Azrael. Right guys? That's funny, right? It's not funny. That's the only goat that shows up this entire season. That's the best I could think of. The combined weight of Sky and Sugar eventually breaks the monitor, and the two fall down. Sky is mostly fine, but Sugar ends up landing on her face.
My nose has bled like this since I tried cow tipping at Uncle Elliot's farm.
Was that a cutaway gag?
So, what are you gonna do with the $1 million if you win?
It's always been my dream to have my own business, a flower shop and cage fighting school called Roses Are Red, Roses Are Blue.
Could she have a worse plan for the money? Most businesses fail in their first year, and the name she's chosen is the second worst name ever.
Wow, Sean is surprisingly small business negative, though, yeah, Jasmine's idea sucks. The two of them show up to the first major obstacle, a bunch of hoodoos with a steep drop, and also lava. Everyone please mark lava on your Total Drama Challenge bingo card. Both Sean and Jasmine are reluctant about jumping from hoodoo to hoodoo, but Chris alerts them that the crocodiles are well on their track. Sean reveals in the confessional that he's terrified of crocodiles because they're green and carnivorous like zombies are. I assume he's afraid of frogs too. Jasmine isn't as afraid of crocodiles though.
I'm really not scared of crocs. They're pretty much Australia's version of the domestic house cat, only with somewhat bigger teeth. And some say a slightly more lethal death roll. But they haven't met my whiskers. Whiskers, time for your bath. Okay, another time then.
No, it's fine. I just didn't think there'd be 2 cutaway gags is all.
The stress of the situation scares Sean so much that he literally freezes in fear, I guess. Jasmine tries to wake him up and struggles, but she gets the idea to kiss him and that immediately brings him back. Admittedly, I'm kind of a sucker for magic kiss jokes. Jasmine tells him she believes in him and that he can make it across if he really tries. I mean, the guy has been shown to be able to climb trees like a monster. If anyone can do it, it's him. He jumps at the first hoodoo and starts slipping because it's covered in grease actually, and he eventually loses his balance and falls right on the kiwis. Nutshots in Total Drama. You don't see that as much anymore. He almost falls down, but fortunately Jasmine catches him in the nick of time, saving his life. He says in the confessional that he really feels indebted to her, but still is conflicted about splitting the money. I mean, I would be too. They like each other, but they met, like, less than 2 weeks ago. The couple makes it to the final hoodoo and dodges a swinging log. However, Jasmine gets hit right in the back of the head, causing her to fall forward and plummet to the bottom of the mountain were it not for Sean being there. She's still really hurt though, and Sean has to carry her over his back. The crocodiles refuse to cross the gap until Chris presses a button that reveals that they're robots with a wall climbing mode, which is kinda interesting because they literally ate the goat from earlier. Chris created fake robot crocodiles, but also made them capable of eating small animals. That's like deranged. Eventually, Sean loses the energy to carry Jasmine, but luckily she's feeling a lot better, good enough to climb the steep cliff right in front of them. Sugar and Sky reach the hoodoos, and Sugar walks over all of them completely oblivious to her peril since she's focused on her nose, and Sky lassos her way over. I like gags like that. Sky comes across a cave and suggests to Sugar that they go inside, on the off chance that it's a shortcut. It's a gamble, but they're already way behind and don't have much to lose, so they decide to go in, and the good news is that it actually is a shortcut. The bad news is that the final area is filled with killer robot bears. Dun dun dun. Sugar says she doesn't plan to die here, and she 4D slips into the Total Drama Confessional Pocket Dimension to say that she wants to use the money to go to college and study veterinary medicine and cosmetology to hopefully get a job doing makeup for animals on TV.
I actually like that. Obviously, it's still a bit silly, but it's funny to me that she's the only one in the group who wants to use her money to pursue education.
She hatches a plan to get out, and that plan is to kill all the robots with her stinky cabbage farts, which are so stinky that it burns the outer mascot suits of the bears, leaving only their endoskeletons. Poo-poo pee-pee, doo-doo, caca.
Honestly, for what it's worth, it's not like this type of humor wasn't present in some of my favorite episodes of the show.
We cut back to Sean and Jasmine climbing up the cliff with Jasmine bringing up how unbeatable they are, but she notices Sean's lack of enthusiasm over the idea of them splitting the $1 million. Before Sean gets the chance to have that awkward conversation, Jasmine accidentally picks a loose portion of rock which causes her to fall over and get caught in a branch. That's one swole-ass branch being able to carry a 7-foot-tall giant. Sean starts climbing down to get her, but she tells him to go ahead to the finish line and she'll find a way back. Ooh, episode 5 Jasmine is not gonna like that. Sean agrees, and Jasmine soon falls from the branch. But not because of the branch, it's because of her backpack strap. That branch is as swole as Dave is. Jasmine lands right on Sugar and Sky, leaving them all equidistant from the finish line. Sean arrives at the peak of the mountain, but he's greeted by the robot crocodiles, who literally have jetpack legs. They are also equipped with My Tunes and speakers, and they play Justin's music for a joke. Honestly, it's kinda cool to hear that song again. Sean faces his fear head on and dodges 3 out of the 4 crocs. He grabs the flag, only to realize he's literally standing in the mouth of the final one and he gets vored. Chris thinks he's dead, but the croc goes haywire and explodes because, I don't know, Sean gave it an upset stomach or something. Chris tells the girls that Sean won immunity, which literally makes no sense because there isn't even a vote for him to be immune from. I don't know why this show says stuff like that. It's like the bike race episode all over again. Jasmine sprints ahead as Sky tries to honor her deal with Sugar by pushing her forward. Sugar immediately takes advantage of this and steps aside. Sky falls down, and Jasmine turns around in fear for Sky's safety. For some reason, that makes me feel something. I think it's because seeing a character express genuine concern for the safety of a competitor is such a rare sight at this point in the show. It's like once in a blue harvest moon.
How fortuitous.
It seems like it's game over for Sky, but in an almost Zoe-esque level of plot convenience, Sky happens to land on a robo-crocodile and rides her way to the top of the mountain. Jasmine and Sugar race for last place, and Sugar quickly realizes she's at a disadvantage given how athletic Jasmine is. She begins having her dramatic downfall while leaning on a tree, but she accidentally tips it over and it lands on Jasmine. Sugar says she meant to do that, but I think it actually was unintentional, given her face when the tree tipped over was one a surprise. Anyway, Sugar gets the lead, but Jasmine musters the strength to pick up the tree and press forward. Honestly, I don't know why she insists on carrying the tree. That doesn't make that much sense. Either way, Sugar makes it to the finish line, meaning Jasmine is eliminated from the show. Sugar, Sky, and Sean, we can call them S for short, get their marshmallows, and Sean wins a bunch of beef testicles as a takeout meal. I guess they are still doing that gag. Takeout food isn't immunity though, I'm still bothered by that. Sean apologizes to Jasmine for not helping out, but she says it's okay since it was her idea and she hopes he wins the game. They also kiss before she's launched off. Altogether, it's a cute way of wrapping it up. Jasmine is pretty uncontested as my favorite character in the cast. She has the most chemistry with others in this season, although, to be candid, that's not a huge accomplishment given how many characters are just doing their own thing. I had some issues with her hostility to Sean, but you know, they ended it well, and I'm definitely an all's well that ends well kind of total drama fan. You can get away with a lot from me if you clean it up, I think. Jasmine gets shot out of the cannon, and then Sugar just farts all over the others with no shame whatsoever. Which actually doesn't make sense because it was established in the first episode that Sugar finds farting embarrassing and says it's unfitting of a pageant queen. What happened to that, Sugar? This is basically character assassination. Another mark against season 6! Episode 12, the semi-finals. Why is Sugar still here? I'm still not over that. I think I'm just gonna cut out all carbs when I'm done with this video. The episode opens up with Sky waking to the sight of someone about to hit her with a club. She braces herself, but the mysterious sugar-shaped figure disappears so Sky thinks it was a dream. It wasn't. Sugar was planning to hit her.
They're being a bit ham-fisted about puffing Sugar up as the season antagonist, I'll be honest.
I feel like they're making up for all the time spent not building her up that way, because suddenly she's way more aggressive about competing and way more passionate about lying and cheating to victory. She talks about it like it's some brilliant strategy. It's like Edgeworth in Prosecutor's Path talking about his brilliant method of using logic and reasoning to come to conclusions about stuff.
Honestly, Sugar's status as an antagonist is kind of a hot debate among fans of the show, because she really doesn't do much. Most of the time, she's kind of like a mean Owen comic relief character, with a lot less comic relief, whose skills are often accidentally useful even though she's not actually trying that hard. She did cause Ella's elimination though, I guess, but that seemed to be more like a personal vendetta.
She also tried to put distance between Sky and Dave, which I guess is pretty manipulative, especially with her little campaign to convince Sky that Dave was a bit of a Casanova.
Even still, I think Sugar is the closest thing we have to a traditional antagonist here, especially with how far she's made it. Furthermore, her behavior in the last 2 episodes feels like a conscious effort to push her over the line.
The challenge for the semifinals, and I know I've said this for basically every episode except for the Robot Island supervillain one, is pretty simple. Each of the contestants is given 1 minute to come up with a challenge all 3 of them will have to do, and the lowest performing competitor throughout all 3 rounds will be eliminated. It's an interesting proposition, as everyone gets the opportunity to create a challenge that either plays to their strengths or exploits the other's weaknesses. Sky's challenge gets selected first, which prompts Sugar to accuse Chris of playing favorites, which he swiftly denies as the order was selected randomly when he threw darts at the interns while blindfolded, which I'll commend as something I think is kind of funny. Chris has been Flanderized, but sometimes it's funny. Sky's challenge is a hurdling race, which is good for her given the whole athlete thing. It's also good for Sean because apparently he dabbles in hurdling because it's good practice for the zombie apocalypse.
I'm happy about it too, because it reminds me of the Hurdle Challenge and World Tour, and I need to keep the good memories close to stay sane for the next episode.
The challenge rankings end up pretty much how you'd expect, with Sky placing first, Sean second, and Sugar third, but they all end up having a bit of trouble with the booby traps Chris added. Also, Sugar for some reason thinks that she's supposed to collect the hurdles, so she thought she won but didn't. Let's see. Sugar Dumb Evil Zombies. Sugar Dumb Evil Zombies. Sugar Dumb Evil Zombies. Sugar Dumb Evil Zombies. Ugh, you only got 3 jokes in this season! Sean's challenge, like Sky's, was chosen to take advantage of his skills, in this case his adept tree climbing. The 3 campers have to cross 100 meters or so without touching the ground, and if they fall down they have to start over. It's a cool idea for a challenge, honestly. And unlike the hurdles, it ends up being more of a mix-up who wins. Obviously Sean takes the initial lead, but Sky is quick on his tail. Sean misses a risky jump but fortunately lands on a branch. Once again, the branches in this season are swole as hell, and is faced by a monkey with a chainsaw trying to chop him off.
You spend your whole life preparing for zombies, then a monkey with a saw throws all that work out the window.
The monkey cuts off the branch and sends Sean plummeting, but he grabs onto another one with his knees. Sky then makes a huge jump that scares the monkey, which leads it to jump down and knocks Sean down to the ground, which means he has to start over. The chainsaw-wielding monkey jumps on Sean, sending him into total panic. He throws it toward a tree, which causes it to short circuit and reveals that it's actually a robot. So, I guess we're leaning towards the Sugar doesn't know what the inside of an animal feels like theory today. While all of this is happening, Sugar is still on the first tree, trying to climb as high as she can because she doesn't understand what the challenge is, but fortunately in a classic moment of total drama serendipitous stupidity, the tree starts wobbling back and forth, unable to support Sugar's body weight so high up, and it ends up hurtling her all the way towards the finish line, where she knocks off the branch Sky was standing on. She ends up in first place, and Sean gets second a few seconds later. With this, all 3 of them are tied, so whoever loses Sugar's challenge is the one going home. Which is apparently good for Sugar because she picked a talent contest, and Sugar is talented. Apparently. Actually, no, to be fair, she's made some impressive feats this season. I'll give her credit. Sky, Sean, and Sugar all get 2 minutes to prepare, which doesn't make any sense given the amount of things that need to be done. Total Drama is doing the pointlessly short time frame thing again. The talent show will be judged by Chris McLean, Anthony Fantano, we're not doing the Mario Kart bit, but we're bringing this back because I know you all love it so much, and the newly rebuilt Scuba Bear.
Ugh, great. Another fake-out character death. What is this, Invincible?
Sky goes up first, and her talent is apparently burping so loud and so powerfully that she can literally break cardboard cowboy standees. She says in the confessional that she can burp really powerfully because of all her Olympic training. This isn't really a complaint, but it's weird that they've only brought up the Olympic training thing in like 3 episodes, including this one. Though, I guess it's a breath of fresh air not having a character shove their main gimmick down our throats every chance they get. I'm not exactly a fan of the whole burping thing, but to its credit, the banter Sky has with Chris throughout is pretty funny to me.
Bravo!
Let's see the judges' scores.
Light to decent 9.
6.5?
The bad guy costumes were cliche. Black hats, yawn.
Next up is Sean, and his challenge is pretty much in the same spirit as Sky's. He performs an armpit serenade, which basically means he plays a classical piece with the fart sounds from his armpit.
Can you believe I've been making these videos for 6 years now?
He decides on the most well-known part of Rossini's Barber of Seville.
Love this record. Great record. Fantastic record. Feeling a decent to strong 9 on this album.
The judges love it so much that Sean ends up taking the lead and guaranteeing himself a spot in the finale, meaning that Sky's only hope at making it to the final 2 is Sugar somehow bombing her talent show appearance, which she thinks is unlikely because Sugar is allegedly talented. Allegedly.
Dear fans, you know me as Sugar, but my farmies on the farm call me Sugar Silo, the only artist to ever combine rap and country. I call it Craptree.
Oh my God, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck?
Sugar Silo, I'm wicked sweet. I tap it when I rap it with a tasty beat. Flow like milk from a Jersey cow. I'm the queen of Craptree, all should bow. Sugar holla! Sugar Silo, go! Do-si-do! Sugar Silo, here to you win the dough. Sugar holla! Like a talking horse, the truth I speak. I'll take out Miss Olympic and the zone be free. Am I tripping? No, wait, let's be for real. I'm gonna win this $1 million deal. Sugar holla! That's how it's done.
So you know how I said earlier in this video that Pocateo Island has a habit of being unfunny with its chest? Yeah, this is grating. It's painfully unfunny. It so dramatically misses the mark that I remember being visibly angry about it as a kid. I hadn't gotten this angry since episode 1.
I've tried not to say this too much throughout the video because I think it's not the most productive criticism. I want to relay information about the story this season tells without constantly bringing up my preference to the older material. But I think it's important to state how much it stung to see Total Drama become this as a kid. Oh, okay. The Honey Boo Boo character is rapping out of time now. Courtney got booted because she drew a list in crayon. All the characters died floating into the sun. Rodney! It's definitely strong, and I think it might come off as a bit much to get this bent out of shape over what is mostly just a really grown-worthy skit, but I don't know. It's just another clear example that this show had changed.
Obviously, if you find this funny, that's fine. Humor's subjective, but I don't. Not even a little bit. And it's crazy, because honestly, this show, up until this point, had a pretty good track record of musical comedy to me. I love the music in World Tour. Even the Jeopardy song. You can argue this is supposed to be unpleasant to listen to, and you'd have a point, but I think a lot of the same issues can be seen in Ella's songs throughout the season. The performances feel really out of whack, which is weird because honestly the voice actors for these characters are pretty damn good at speaking. This is just speculation, but I'm convinced the voice actors who had to sing in this season were asked to do it without listening to the instrumental or a click track or anything, and that would all be taken care of afterwards. It would definitely explain why Ella seems to change tempo every 5 seconds in her final goodbye song. I also just think the lyrics in this season are really force-fitted. You get better bars from the Tomodachi Life Mies. They play it up for comedy, but I would have preferred they take a bit more time to make it more graceful. Especially because I think there still was a good amount of chilling on the weekend as usual, watching SpongeBob and Scooby-Dooby-Doo type lyricism in World Tour, but not nearly to the same extent.
Anyway, I don't want to get too in the weeds about this joke. This show has always had jokes that fall flat. I've always had jokes that fall flat. It's really not that big of a deal. It just stings to see them overcommit to it so hard, especially as a kid.
Obviously, Sugar gets the canon of shame. And the silver lining to this scene I dislike so passionately is that the immediate cut to her crying in the cannon with flowers and a tiara is funny. But yeah, Sugar's gone, and there's a part of me that's pretty darn glad, but candidly, she's grown on me a good amount over the years, especially with this most recent rewatch. If you had asked me my least favorite character of the show even 3 or 4 years ago, I probably would have said her. If not, I definitely would have named her in my bottom 3. However, that's not the case anymore. She's not even my bottom 3 of this cast.
I think a lot of my past hostility to Sugar was a holdover from how maddening I found her as a kid. She was just everything I disliked about Pahkitew bundled up into one character. And because of that, I think it was really easy for my hatred of her to compound upon itself. And frankly, she didn't make a good first impression.
Even as a kid in middle school, the whole Honey Boo Boo thing felt totally behind the curve. I think people may have forgotten because the cultural difference between 2012 and 2014 nowadays doesn't seem as stark, but in the moment, the show dedicating an entire character to making fun of toddlers and tiaras and rural American South culture was annoyingly behind the curve to me. It was like Advice Animals in 2015, or Wojaks in 2022. Old meme archive might be gone, but I still have it in me, guys. It just seemed like we were past this. Honey Boo Boo had been a social pariah for years at that point, and we were not in for any new perspectives on the subject matter. The show basically does over 12 episodes what South Park did in like 90 seconds 2 years before. Over the years though, I think there are some things about Sugar that I've grown to appreciate. There were definitely more bits of humor I like than I remember. Obvious shout out to her relationship with Ella, but a less obvious shout out to the pigeon joke from episode 6. That one's a standout to me. There are still a lot of jokes that totally bomb on me, but I think over the years watching this season over and over again, they don't annoy or frustrate me in the same way as they used to. I just don't find them funny and move on, which actually is probably a good thing. That's probably healthy. I feel super zen saying that. This is a general pattern I've had with a lot of my least favorite elements of the show. After so many rewatches, I've gotten less and less bothered by the things I find annoying or grating, and have grown to appreciate the bits and pieces that actually entertain me.
But yeah, that's the semi-final episode. It was, Other than the Sugar rap scene, which I'd say is probably the least funny minute in this entire show's history, it was surprisingly mundane. And this is becoming a bit of a pattern. I said basically the exact same thing with the All-Star semifinals. Nevertheless, we're here. Finale time, I guess. Sorry, I'm not gonna pretend I'm excited. This is an exciting finale.
Alright, episode 13 opens on the night before the last challenge, to get a glimpse at how our finalists are handling the fact that they've made it so far. And honestly, like All-Stars, they don't seem that fazed about making it as far as they have. Sure, Sky is having trouble sleeping, but that's about it. I really can't even make a joke about them not being surprised because they were obviously going to make the final two, because they really weren't. Well, one of them wasn't. I think Sky is one of the most obvious finalist characters in the show's history. She literally has important total drama female physiognomy. The moment I saw her, I was like, boom, Final Four, boom, Final Four. And that's not because I'm particularly good at predicting this kind of thing. You see, Pahkitew Island is a lot like Revenge of the Island, with the key difference being that instead of having one Stacy, there's like 9 of them. So it's not exactly brain science or rocket surgery to narrow it down.
On the other hand, Sean's making it to the finale took me by surprise. Honestly, he was way more important to this season's story than I initially thought. I remember seeing Sean in episode 1 and thinking that he was going to be a really early gimmick boot. What? The guy who literally only talks about zombies all the time? Yeah, he's going to be out fast. And then immediately in the next episode, they show him to be really resourceful and then set up a romance arc, and I'm like, huh? What? That guy's important? He's an actual character? Okay.
Chris wakes up the contestants and summons them over to the meeting area. He does the whole tired, "Oh, you're gonna die, guys. This is the most dangerous challenge ever" spiel that we all know and love, and tells the campers that they both get one helper for the challenge. Because, in case you forgot when I said this earlier in the video, the eliminated contestants don't return to act as the peanut gallery this season. Whatever. Who cares, right? Who cares about the eliminated contestants? Who cares about the aftermaths? I certainly don't. I like that the total drama world feels smaller than ever. I like how the campers barely feel like they have lives in the outside world anymore. I like how Chef maxes out at like 2 lines an episode. I'm completely thrilled. I love this. I love season 6! So each finalist will select their helper by playing a slot machine-like game. Whoever they land on is selected as their helper, but they're allowed to try again once if they don't like the first person they land on. The player who picks first is selected by a coin toss, which means that Chris flicks a coin and it hits Sean.
It's always a little frustrating to me as a critic when a show immediately makes a clever joke right when I'm trying to criticize a lot of its big picture decisions.
Sean picks first, and he lands on Jasmine on his first try. He decides to stick with her because, yeah. Sky goes up second and lands on Dave. Because of his erratic behavior and the fact that she let him down so harshly, I guess, Sky chooses to re-roll, but once again lands on Dave, much to her chagrin. A helicopter arrives literally seconds later with Jasmine and Dave ready to go, which means either that all the contestants were in there but weren't allowed to watch the challenge from the sidelines, or that Chris rigged the game so that it would land on these two. Take your pick. Personally, the second one doesn't annoy me as much.
There was a flippy screen, landed on you and was like, BAM! Yes! Totally!
Totally! Did you land on me right away, too? Oh, Dave. Funny story.
Chris, please don't.
Sky landed on you, took another spin, landed on you again, and then whined. Kinda like this. Are you kidding me? Sorry you got stuck with me. I'll try not to get in your way.
You know, Chris's impression wasn't even that good.
Me against Sean was fine, but Sean and Jasmine? To have any shot of winning, I need Dave to be at his best. I gotta do something.
You kissed me!
I passed on you because I wanted to focus on the challenge. That's hard when you're teamed up with someone you want to go on a date with.
You want to go on a date with me?
Can you help me win this challenge?
You bet I can!
Wow. People are pretty hard on Dave, me included, but, Sky is no angel either. It's pretty dirty to lie to his face like that.
Chris interrupts Saskatchewan's hottest new celebrity TV couple with information about the new challenge. He describes it as a no-holds-barred race around the island, focusing on the many crazy sights now visible because of Scarlett's tampering. It seems pretty promising, actually. Like, the first leg of the challenge is racing down a 2,000-foot snow-capped mountain. Then, it's gonna get heated. The campers are gonna, trudge through mud. And then they'll race 2 miles.
Okay, I'm being mean. I don't really mind the challenge that much. The final challenges have been kind of plateauing in terms of how over the top they are since season 3 or 4, but that's not really an issue given that one of my favorite finales in this entire show is a talk show episode. I think I'm mostly just interested in how this show had such radical spectacle creep for a while and then just stopped.
But anyway, the gang gets airlifted up to the mountain and the race begins. The teams are given the option to try and build a sled to ride down, but Jasmine convinces Sean to just ski it, and Dave and Sky follow suit. It's probably the right call, although Sky is skeptical of it given that Dave probably isn't as good at skiing as Jasmine. So both teams make their way down the mountain. After some time passes, Jasmine looks back to see how far their lead has gotten, and because of that she accidentally hits a giant clump of snow that they call a mogul. And that perplexes me because they don't look like moguls to me. It blinds Jasmine, which only makes it more difficult to make it down unscathed. This gives Sky hope for their chances, and she tells Dave that they can catch up as long as they avoid the moguls. Sick. For some reason though, Dave insists on running right into the moguls because that's what Jasmine did, and he and Sky are launched into the air on account of their lower combined weight.
So, why is Dave stupid now? Like, did they have to make him stupid?
Jasmine's a bit more solid than me, but I plan to start bulking up when I get back home. You know, work out, eat more carbs. Look, this story's gonna have a happy ending. The boy gets the girl gets the money. That sounds wrong.
You know, I don't like this episode, I don't like this finale, and I don't like Dave and Sky's relationship arc. But they snuck some cute jokes into the script.
Dave and Sky keep getting launched around as they hit the clumps of snow while Jasmine and Sean make it to the bottom of the mountain. It's a really short sequence, to be honest. This all happened in like 2 minutes. Sky and Dave are close behind, now rolled up into a huge snowball. Sky is frustrated at their current position, and Dave starts apologizing profusely like the little toad he is, and Sky takes a surprising amount of pity. She then tells him there's something she needs to apologize for. Ooh, we got a new plot twist? A new obstacle to overcome? Huh? Another turn in our protagonist's adventure? Huh? Fresh TV? Will it be newfound love, Fresh TV? Happily ever after? Fresh TV? Before Sky gets the chance to tell Dave what she's sorry for, Dave notices the fire-breathing cat bot from episode 10. Sky hatches an idea and begins insulting the cat to provoke it. The cat gets peeved off and blasts a bunch of fire in their direction, which melts the snow, but burns Dave's hair off. I'm really tired of these bald jokes. Heather was good, Sierra was okay, Stacy was concerning, and Dakota sealed it as a problem. And now Dave. Check me into the hospital, folks, because I'm sick of it. The show almost seems sick of it too, because it's not even acknowledged afterwards by any other character. All that happens is Chris pauses and says the challenge is getting wacky and crazy, but he doesn't even mention that Dave had his hair scorched off, like, at all. In fact, there's not a single line in this episode where any character comments on it. Honestly, I'm kind of curious now if Dave going bald wasn't even in the script and was something they added while animating. I can't prove that though. After the commercial break, Sean and Jasmine arrive first to the giant mud lake, and Chris tells them that the next leg of the challenge involves one camper piggybacking on the other while they trudge through. The one on the bottom also has to breathe through a garden hose so they don't, drown. Jasmine tells Sean it's safer for them both if he stands on the top, and Sean is grateful but asks if she's okay with that given she's been doing a lot of the heavy lifting so far. She says it's fine because, well, there appears to be a bit of a misunderstanding between these two. Apparently, Jasmine still thinks that they're gonna split the money, even though they didn't both make it to the finals. Sean, who thought that the deal was off since she got eliminated, was not under that impression, and now that Sean's performance in the finals is reliant on her cooperation, he's kind of forced to pretend that he's totally fine with giving her half his winnings.
Worst helper choice ever? It's not selfish. I'm doing this for her too. My goal of us not being eaten by zombies outweighs her stupid idea for the money. I'll try to word that better.
I actually like this conflict, surprised as I am to say. Especially compared to the kind of couple conflicts we, usually get.
I guess my only gripe, and it's really not even a gripe, it's just something that's kind of funny to me, is that the reasons they want the money are a little bit silly, given what's at stake is a stupid zombie-proof bunker and an even stupider small business. Some people argue that it feels a bit silly for the characters to be so committed to each other when we've only had like 4 episodes where they've actually gotten along. But honestly, given how little screen time Fresh TV had to work with, I'd rather they rush relationships at this pace than not include them at all for the sake of realism. Anyway, Jasmine and Sean jump in, while Dave starts freaking out at the prospect of being covered in mud, given the last time he was in mud it was actually a mysterious brown substance the show chose not to name, but Sky jumps in and he's forced to deal with it. Jasmine starts freaking out covered in mud, which is ascribed to her claustrophobia, but I think most people would freak out if they were walking through mud breathing through a hose, and she turns around and loses her sense of direction. The duos bump into each other, which initiates a classic wimp fight between Dave and Sean. With the challenge now at a standstill, Chris launches a third scuba bear into the mud, which literally just ejects them, launching them straight to the exact same place at the finish line. Man, with all those fake deaths, he really is like Starburns.
I love how none of that mattered. Like, it's a tie game. Okay, then.
Despite the fact that Jasmine kind of messed things up for Sean, Sean goes to the confessional to bring up that she has done most of the hard work, and honestly, he probably should split the money with her. So, I guess that arc's done. Sean's recovering from his irrational fear and is now making responsible, high-time preference decisions, like promising $500,000 to a girl he met like 2 weeks ago.
Wow, it took me a total of 11 sentences to be a complete hypocrite with my complaints about the show. YouTube critic brain rot is real, guys.
Chris pauses the race, which makes me curious if he wouldn't have paused if Sean and Sky hadn't been tied, and he invites the final two and their helpers to sit down as he brings out a monitor, and also Dave has his hair again. He plays a few of Sean's confessionals, where he talks about how he doesn't want to share the money with Jasmine and thinks her flower shop / MMA school idea is stupid. And she is furious. Sky taunts that she's grateful that she hasn't blabbed too much in the confessionals, which means Chris can't use footage against her, which... you're just setting yourself up, Sky. And Chris then shows Dave a clip from her audition tape.
Hi, I'm Sky. My audition tape? Why would he?
Let's get to the good part.
That if I do get on the show, I'll really miss my boyfriend, Keith. Oh
no! Alright, so how much time do we have left before we never see these characters again and have to wait 9 years for any new total drama season? 6 minutes? Okay. This isn't going to be explored very thoughtfully. This isn't going to be satisfying.
My boyfriend was in the room when I made that audition tape. I had to say that. Truth is, I was going to dump him before I left, but ran out of time, and I really like Dave. I messed this up big time.
You really don't need to say that. We really don't need these details at the bottom of the 9th. I don't care if Sky was ethically cheating on her boyfriend or not.
I am so, confused about what is going on with Dave and Sky. I mean, did you, hear that?
It's not that funny, Chris.
Maybe he missed it.
I'll really miss my boyfriend, Keith. It's my boyfriend, Keith. It's my boyfriend, Keith.
I'm looking for a boyfriend. I see that. My boyfriend, Keith.
Dave, I can explain.
That was the butt? But I have a boyfriend? A boyfriend!
Jasmine, I changed my mind. I will split the money. I want to. You have to believe me.
I will never believe you again.
Anyway, amidst all the riveting character drama that's happening, I mean that half sarcastically because at this point I'll take what I can get with Jasmine and Sean. It's not super cutting edge, but they are dunk knee tier when they're right next to Sky and Dave, as they say that there's no such thing as two good total drama couples together. Chris blows the "we need to stop the character dialogue so we can do Cartoon Network approved slapstick comedy" air horn and tells the helpers that they will now act as hinderers for the last portion of the challenge. He gives them small game controllers that can create obstacles for the final two during the final dash to the finish line. He also gives them the incentive that if they keep Sky and Sean from finishing in the next 10 minutes, the two of them get to split the million. I don't know why, but this helpers can get the million thing has always bothered me ever since they started doing it in All Stars.
I could still open my cage fighting school / flower shop?
Your what? That is the coolest idea I have ever heard. Horrible idea. Who gets into a fight with flowers? I've never had a plan for the money, but now I do. I'm gonna light it on fire in front of Sky. Does that seem too bitter?
Remember Cameron and Sierra? I miss Cameron and Sierra. Actually, never mind. I think I prefer David and Sky over Cameron and Sierra.
Now, to be clear, I don't like where this whole thing has gone, and I think Dave's descent into madness got old fast, but I think sometimes people in the community have a habit of evaluating Dave and Sky by the standards they set for other relationships in the show. Relationships that, believe it or not, are supposed to be taken seriously. I don't think Dave and Sky are supposed to be taken seriously, though that doesn't necessarily make them entertaining or fun to watch. One thing I will actually back up Dave and Sky's story for is that I think a lot of people argue that this whole thing is less coherent than it actually is. I kind of forgot how cut and dry the details actually are about where Sky and Dave are emotion-wise. I don't think the logic of their back and forth, by total drama standards, is actually that egregious, even though a lot of people would argue it is. It's not like Gwen and Trent's breakup where they were just making shit up. Oh man, Trent is so obsessed with me, and I hate that blue foam hat he's wearing. You know, that hat is the same color as your hair. I think he's wearing it because of you. What? Trent, I don't like how obsessed with me you've gone since you started wearing that foam hat. What are you talking about, babe? It's that hat. I don't like it. Why did you start wearing it out of nowhere? You don't understand, Gwen. I've always worn this hat. In fact, it's one of my defining character traits. I'm like Starburns. What? My grandma gave me this hat when I was 8. right before she died. What are you talking about? I was wearing the hat when you kissed me. No you weren't. I was wearing the hat when I said goodbye. I don't remember. I wore that hat while carrying the rock. This is a key part of my character, actually. A lot of people act like the fact that she apparently is into Dave now, despite the fact that she seemed to be frustrated by him at the start of the episode, to be contradictory. But I don't think it is. I think it's possible to like someone but not want to see them because they're mad at you. Calling him the one here feels a little bit over the top, but considering that she was willing to kiss him just to get him on board for the competition, it makes sense that she'd exaggerate her attraction to him to calm him down. It might not be the most morally upright move, but it's exactly the kind of thing I could see a teenager doing, especially with $1 million on the line. I think people also have a hard time even believing Sky is supposed to have feelings for Dave at this point, given she has a habit of saying she doesn't have feelings for him, and not in the super child-proof, obvious lying way this show usually employs. But at the same time, there are so many bits and pieces that imply that despite everything, he still means something to her, even if she doesn't want to acknowledge him. But also at the same time, I think a lot of people see him in episode 9 and have a hard time buying that there is any possible scenario in which Sky would even care about him after the way he acted, but she does. I think she has a thing for really pathetic guys, particularly the bald and short ones, kind of like Marissa Tomei.
None of this is to say that we shouldn't call a doctor, because we definitely do have a case of love bipolar, but I don't think it's really because the writers can't make up their minds like a lot of fans say. I think it's because Sky, in canon, can't make up her mind. Nevertheless, as I said earlier, I think the show would have benefited from making her train of thought a bit more clear, especially since we're not getting a happy ending to this. We're watching something crash and burn.
Honestly though, whether Dave and Sky are meant to be taken seriously or not, they aren't, but for the sake of the hypothetical, I'm not a fan of where their story arc goes. All they really do is remind me of how much more I enjoyed this show when it was willing to wear its influences on its sleeves with its friendships and romances. I think that's why, despite Trent being called kind of generic, his relationship with Gwen feels so much more impactful to me than anything we're served here. At this point, the characters don't even feel like people we're supposed to attach any emotions to. Remember when Chris made fun of Duncan for carving a heart in the wooden Courtney head, and Lashana freaking decked him for it? Where did that energy go?
I think the whole Keith thing is just too out of nowhere, by the way. I guess they wanted something to reignite Dave's very funny and very enjoyable jealousy, but I don't know. Saving that key detail for a big reveal this late is a bit much. Especially because they're kind of trying to tell us at the same time that, yeah, they were dating, but she didn't like him anymore and only said that to make him happy, and she actually does want to make things right with Dave, and it's a bit late for all of this. Especially because we're minutes away from never seeing these characters again.
Anyway, I know I just talked about this scene far longer than the actual length of the scene itself, but the following scene is pretty simple. The final two begin the last leg of the race, hindered by the most extreme conditions that the artificial island can create. Honestly, it's a little sad that this is relegated to such a short portion of the episode. I would have liked the artificial island stuff to be used a bit more liberally here. Sky and Sean remain neck and neck at first, but Sean gets hit by a tree trunk that jutted out of the ground. Sky notices this and closes her eyes to cheer at her sudden advantage, but consequently slips and falls seconds later, because making characters celebrate small victories and then unknowingly make things worse for themselves is the total drama writer's favorite thing to do. It's addicting to them. While controlling the island, Jasmine starts to have second thoughts about endangering Sean the way she is, given she's mad at him but doesn't want to see him get super hurt. Dave has no such inhibition. He's speedrunning having the worst crash out in total drama history. As a last-ditch effort to stop Sky or Sean from winning, Dave creates a giant rock formation that raises them about 96 feet into the air, I did the math, and at that point it seems impossible for either of the finalists to win, even though they were mere feet from the finish line. Sean gives up and silently cheers that Jasmine will be able to open the worst small business ever, and Sky starts having a tantrum. Not a bad tantrum though, it's a pretty understandable tantrum. She starts stomping her feet and then jumps, and that somehow destroys the entire formation. Sean and Sky fall down with the avalanche. There are a lot of avalanches this season, and it comes to an end right when time runs out, giving Dave and Jasmine the impression that they won this time.
Game over! Oh, yeah!
Is Sean okay?
Who cares? We won! Congratulations! Revenge is sweetest. Whoa, what have we here? No!
And Switchy sweeps the competition! That's $2 million in one season for Switchy! Because All-Stars and Pocket Tail are technically the same season. We call that the Switchy difference, ladies and gentlemen! Go to hell, Sean and Sky! Go to hell, Dave! You're alright, Jasmine, but you have not defeated the undisputed Total Drama World Champ! Ah! Okay, I'm done. This isn't actually exciting. I hate this finale. Now, although we all know the season has a canon ending where Switchy wins the million, it's always fun to speculate which of the two other endings was written first, and which one was probably made after the fact by switching details around. Sometimes it feels pretty obvious like in World Tour, other times it's a bit more tricky like in All-Stars, but here, I have basically no doubts which of the two endings was written first. I'm Team Sean. I'm going all in on Sean. I'm betting the house on Sean. In Sean's ending, he juts his arm out of the snow holding a flower for Jasmine, which causes her to immediately rush over to him, push Chef out of the way, and help him out of the snow. In a weird amount of time, she seems to run the whole field, which Chris said was 2 miles, in a matter of seconds. After being picked up, Sean tells Jasmine that he's willing to split the money with her and they kiss. We also don't see Sky until it fades to all of them in the helicopter leaving the island. Well, most of them in the helicopter. Sky's ending, on the other hand, has Sky sticking her arm up past the finish line. Chef picks her up and wheels her away on a stretcher, and Jasmine arrives after running 2 miles and picks up Sean. Sean asks her if she's still mad at him, and she says yes, but kisses him. I guess she's still grateful to see him okay. That's nice.
My standards have been lowered a bit.
If the fact that Sean and Jasmine get screen time in both endings regardless of who wins doesn't make you believe my theory that Sean's ending was made first, I think the weird sequencing of shots in Sky's ending is the smoking gun. See, in Sean's ending, we see Sean stick his hand out and it immediately pans to Jasmine gasping and running towards him. In Sky's ending, on the other hand, literally, she sticks out her hand and Jasmine gasps and runs anyway, which is just a little bit confusing. Obviously, it's still handsomely reasonable to run towards an important person to you after seeing them potentially die in an avalanche, regardless if they show any signs of survival, but the visceral sequence of events is kind of weird here. It's a little bit bizarre to show Sky's arm reach out of the snow and then pan to Jasmine gasping. It's slightly disjointed, which makes me think that they kind of slotted in Sky without thinking about it too much to save time. And they were definitely trying to save time with this ending, let me tell ya. Usually the finales have a lot more bells and whistles, or at least a more stretched out goodbye, but that is long gone. After Sean and Jasmine kiss, we just fade to black and find ourselves in the helicopter with Chris doing a small little monologue, with no words from the competitors. Also, Chris asks the others if they're forgetting anyone, and assuming that Chef is in the cockpit piloting, they are. They're forgetting Dave. They forgot Dave, and we cut to him moping about missing out on the million and going crazy on TV. Honestly, I'm envious. I wish I was lucky enough to forget Dave. He finds solace in the fact that it can't get any worse, seemingly unaware of the fact that he's on a TV show and that's the last thing you want to say if you don't want something to get worse, and we immediately discover that he's accompanied by Scuba Bear, and the show fades to black. The last bit of mainline total drama we would get for 9 years.
Kumbaya, my lord, kumbaya. Kumbaya, my lord, kumbaya.
One thing that's really funny to me is that I remember people hypothesizing that Dave canonically died after the camera faded away, just because they made a joke about him getting mauled by Scuba Bear, which, frankly, is something we've seen to be very survivable in this universe. We were traumatized by Ezekiel and the fart balloons.
You know, it's almost admirable how much Pacateo Island seemed to just hear all the fan criticism that the show had been getting for the past 3 years and just doubled down on all of them. Because, listen, it's not like the folks at Fresh TV couldn't hear us. If there's one thing Total Drama fans are good at, it's complaining very, very, very loudly.
That's not what fucking Alejandro would say. What the fuck?
I believe they heard our complaints loud and clear. And the fact that they heard us and went, yeah, let's do a wizard character, well, it's bold. If there's one good thing that I will say about this finale compared to a lot of the previous ones, it's that the writers didn't have the same kind of appetite for destruction they started having in World Tour. There's no BS about the island being destroyed, they're not implying these characters are gonna have to spend the rest of their lives in physical therapy, and they didn't destroy the money. It's actually kind of funny that my 2 favorite seasons of the show are the only ones where the winner doesn't get their money. At the very least, with all the annoying BS this episode leaves us with, at least a couple characters get a happy ending and it's treated like a happy ending. That's definitely an important thing to me. As I said during episode 11, I have a bit of an all's well that ends well mentality with this show, so even with the issues I have with Sean and Jasmine, the fact that they ended on good terms fixes it up for the most part. That's also probably why Dave and Sky leave such a sour taste in my mouth. If they had somehow patched it up, or at the very least let Dave calm down and get over it, I think I would like him a lot more, and I'd wager that would be the case with a lot of other fans.
Straight up, that's one of the most understated criticisms of Pahkitew for me. There's like literally one plot line in this entire season that ends satisfyingly. Everything else gets cut off seemingly out of nowhere.
Jasmine and Sean are straight up the only characters that feel like they've learned something or benefited as people from the competition. Everyone else feels exactly the same or worse, especially Sammy, who has an actual arc set up only to be pushed aside like she's a fly on the show's metaphorical shoulder.
It genuinely seems to me that they were going out of their way to avoid standard writing conventions about having characters grow and change over time. Thoughtful character development? No, they're good. Meaningful resolutions? No thanks. And it's weird because they've had thoughtful character arcs in the past with this show. They've excelled at it. A couple times. Honestly, as much as I hate to admit it, they really started stumbling in season 2. But it only got worse and worse as time went on for me.
I think this is a big part of why no one coming back for the finales irritates me so much. The fact that we stopped getting episodes like Haute Couture, the specials, and the aftermaths already stung. Like, that still puts me down. But that they can't even be bothered to bring back the eliminated contestants in both halves of season 5 leaves me just depressed, honestly. Admittedly, at least in the case of Pahkitew Island, it's not like I'm in love with this cast, but it's more about the principle, about having the eliminated contestants return being a good thing to do for the show. You can argue that they can't all come back because Scarlett and Duncan are presumably in jail, but a joke about them being forced to participate on a banana tablet would write itself. I would love that. To Fresh TV's credit, they did go back to bringing back the peanut galleries in future Total Drama and Total Drama adjacent seasons, and that was a big relief. But in the year following Total Drama Pahkitew Island, the fact that the final episode literally only has 5 speaking parts made me hopelessly pessimistic about the future of the show.
That's a major gripe I have with Pahkitew that I think has been stated less and less over the past decade, and I am absolutely going to talk about this more when we get to the conclusion. A lot of people, especially newer fans, and excuse me for going all back in my day right now, often seem confused at why people look at this season that in many ways is just kind of bland and try-hard with such vitriol. And I think it has a lot to do with how it felt to watch when it came out. When it was the newest season of Total Drama, fans like me naturally looked at it and saw it as a sign of what direction the show would want to take in the future. And what did we see? A good amount of us, as always opinions may vary and that's okay, let's be nice to each other in the comments, saw 13 episodes of gimmicky humor, half-baked ideas, a flanderized host, and a cast that seemingly had so little earnest emotional investment behind them that even the writers didn't think of them as worth coming back for the finale. And I think that's a big reason of why I hated this season so passionately when it came out.
It's funny, because I think in retrospect, I've been decently amicable with this season up until these last couple of episodes. Honestly, when I think about the middle of this season, I think about it with a good amount of favor. I haven't shied away from admitting when someone is annoying me, and I've tried to be conscious of my own emotions, but something about this episode, man, it just sinks my soul like a battleship. I mean, there were a couple cute jokes at the start, and it's nice that Sean and Jasmine ended up okay, but everything else is just blah. I honestly don't know whether I dislike it more than the All-Stars finale. I guess it reminds me of the old All-Stars and Pahkitew are unlikable for very different reasons adage. Although All-Stars has no shortage of things to critique, especially with some of the controversial discussion about how Mike's dissociative identity disorder is represented, Pahkitew's finale feels so empty. The show feels like a husk. It's so devoid of anything emotional to me that it has me missing the Mike alters marching up the tower, especially with the show's really irritating attempts at this no hugging, no learning stuff. I understand that it's a style of humor that works well for certain shows, but I still have failed to see Total Drama pull it off. I really, really, really prefer the sappy teen comedy total drama to them trying to parody themselves with Dave and Sky. Sorry. It seems like they had been trying to get less and less emotional ever since season 2, but the show getting this dejected was a first, especially for how so much of the humor falls as flat as it does, at least for me. For all the insults I fling at Revenge for its gimmicky slapstick and Pokemon anime tier oversimplified dialogue, they knew how to step the hell up when it came to giving us emotional beats when they wanted to.
I don't know, man. Total Drama, as much as I love it, feels like a show that never got to reach its true potential. It got close, super close in fact, but at a certain point it felt like what I would have wanted as a fan and what either Fresh TV or Cartoon Network or some other figure in the puzzle wanted became mutually exclusive. And maybe it was short-sighted, but the first and last episode of this season remind me so vividly of how betrayed I felt as a fan of the show when this season came out. I'm hesitant to use the word betrayed because it suggests that my personal taste holds some objective authority over the show when they don't. I also don't think it's fair to act as if we, the viewers, are entitled to something from the creators. Even still, I felt turned back on when I first saw this episode. And it was probably overdramatic and kind of a selfish mindset, but I was a kid, and that's what I felt. So, make of that what you will. Total Drama doomerism has a history, my friends. This is not the first time Dark Switchy has made an appearance. So, that was Total Drama Pahkitew Island. A bit of a rocky start, but it got pretty hectic towards the end. It's a shame it was so short, but, you know, that's life, I guess.
Okay, we poisoned these teens and got them eaten by crocs. What else can we do to fuck them up? I know, let's expose their darkest secrets and break up the ship so if they somehow get back together, they'll have trust issues for the rest of their lives.
That's it. You're going back to prison and we're gonna make a spin-off without you.
And what are you gonna do? Run a daycare or something?
So, Total Drama Pahkitew Island. You might think that, honestly, it's kind of hard to think of the best way to approach my closing thoughts about this season. I kind of didn't expect to be this sad. I thought I'd be long over being sad about Total Drama Pahkitew Island by the time I'm done with the video about it, but here I am. Sad. Huh. You know, I originally made the island video as a one-off, but I was keenly aware that I'd be willing to do more, if it performed well. And it did. Way better than I thought it would. So, for years now, I've had the idea of eventually making a Pahkitew Island video in the back of my mind. But the way I envisioned it changed a lot as I changed as a YouTuber.
Earlier on in this series, I was a lot more broad with my critique, and despite talking about some of my favorite episodes of the show, I was often a bit more hyperbolic and cutthroat for comedic effect. Back then, I imagined the inevitable Pahkitew video as me embracing my inner AVGN Switchy, and spending an hour yelling and screaming and cursing about all the things I disliked about the show. Later on, I think my style of reviewing became a lot more detail-oriented, and on the whole, considerably more glass half full, and consequently, I imagine the Pahkitew video as probably being 2.5 to 3 hours of me trying to find the good that exists here, while poking fun at some of the annoying humor, that, in many ways, isn't actually a big deal. Some sort of odd couple sitcom dynamic where the general conclusion is that Pahkitew Island isn't that bad, despite some corny humor here and there. Total Drama Pahkitew Island. Did you make a pointless zombie joke again? Sorry.
Honestly, when I bunkered down and started working on this video that took a long time to make, that's pretty much what I was expecting. It's also why I predicted, incorrectly, that this video would be less than 3 hours. But I was wrong, and it kinda sucks. I sorta wish Pahkitew Island wouldn't have been as heavy of a topic as All Stars, but approaching this season and trying to capture how I feel about everything I see has made me realize how complicated it really gets. So, this is kind of weird. I think the notes I wrote when planning this video aren't going to be super helpful. Huh. I guess, let me tell you guys a story. It's probably gonna be a little long and drawn out, but I think it's valuable to talk about this after, 6 videos in this series. So, bear with me.
As many of you may know, I've been making YouTube videos for a long time. I picked it up as a hobby when I was 6 years old, and it's been pretty much the most important thing in my life to me ever since. The reason I tell you this is that while Total Drama Pahkitew Island was coming out, I was making videos. Heck, you could say the same for all the previous seasons too. But in between the release times of Total Drama All-Stars and Total Drama Pahkitew Island, I made a big switch in my YouTube content focus, moving away from what were colloquially called Club Penguin comedies to a mix of countdowns and reviews of TV, movies, and video games. I think the kids these days call it media. It was fun, I had fun, though I wouldn't really recommend you guys seek those videos out.
God, I hate this episode. That is so cliche. I think it sucks. I am honestly offended by this moral in so many ways.
Let me set the scene. It's the summer of 2014, a previously established valley in pop culture history. I am now officially a countdown maker on YouTube, and I have a lot of very strong opinions about the state of animation that I stole from the mysterious Mr. Enter. Out comes the new installment in the Total Drama series, and as we've all come to know, I hated it a lot. It was pretty much everything I had come to dislike about Total Drama's recent seasons cranked up to 11, and it got me so angry that I started writing a video about it. I was planning to make a Total Drama video in 2014. Sadly, I never finished it. I kinda wish I had, because a video of a prepubescent Switchy fuming about how much he hated Pahkitew Island would be delightful to look back at right now. I think I would have given Dylan Rance a good run for his money.
What I envisioned back then was a long video, a monstrous 20 to 30 minutes, where I would give a brief rundown on each season what I think went wrong with the show, until it eventually climaxes with me going ham on Pahkitew. I had a lot of choice words for Pahkitew, and my mind kept coming up with more. One thing that happens when I get an idea is I start aggressively daydreaming about it. My brain brews up a storm of key points and jokes whenever I'm really pumped to make a video. I'm sure this isn't unique to me, but I remember fantasizing about this particular video much more vividly than others, and there's a big reason why.
See, as I said, Pahkitew Island was aired around the summer of 2014, mid-July in the United States specifically, and interestingly, that was a big month for me outside of the whole Total Drama thing. Just a few days after the finale aired, I went on a really fun family trip to the United Kingdom and France. I was kinda scared at first since I'd never left the country before, but that fear quickly transformed into awe. I got to see Versailles, I got to see Big Ben, I got to see Stonehenge. I even remember the stupid little things I did in my free time, like watching the mysterious Mr. Enter's Teen Titans Go Waffle episode review as it came out. I was a big fan.
The reason I'm telling you this is that on the last day of that trip, we did a lot of sightseeing in Paris, but the entire time, I was livid about Total Drama Pahkitew Island. I was just fuming the whole day, arms crossed and all. I walked down the Champs-Elysees with Sugar's stupid country rap clouding my mind. I looked at Monet's water lilies while thinking about how much I hated another character going bald for no reason. This season didn't just make me mad, it ignited the underage wannabe cartoon critic in me, and I was bloodthirsty. I was ready to go home and stand on business about Pahkitew Island, but then I flew back the next day and instead made a terrible video of my least favorite MLP episodes.
I am honestly offended by this moral in so many ways.
It's funny. I think the reason I never made the video is because I didn't think Total Drama was popular enough to talk about, and a part of me was embarrassed that I liked it so much. I know it's weird for a preteen to be more embarrassed about Total Drama than My Little Pony, but I had enough YouTube complainers validating my enjoyment of the latter show. I wimped out, and it's a shame because analytics-wise, I probably should have made the TD video. There's a good chance it would have done decently, especially because there were so few YouTubers making videos about the show back then. I can't think of many notable ones other than Super Flipper 76. The reason I'm telling you guys this is, well, it's a charming visual to me, but I also want to stress that in a weird way, this video feels like it's over a decade in the making. Ever since that fateful day in France, I've had a narrative in my mind. I wanted to tell a story, a tragic story in fact, about how a show I loved sacrificed its heartfelt, down-to-earth ethos and characters as it progressively became more insipid, facile, annoying, and unfunny. I probably wouldn't have worded it that way, but yeah, that's the gist. And it's weird, because to a certain extent, it feels like every pot shot I've taken, joke I've made, and cardboard cutout I've tortured in this series up until this point has been building up to this very moment. The story I've wanted to tell for over 11 years is ending here.
Before you guys get the wrong idea, I think I should poke some holes in the narrative I had as a kid. First of all, my vision for this series has changed a lot since the initial Island video, as I said. The video I would have made back then would have been a lot more bitter than the ones I made as an adult. I was a furious little toddler who took pride in his own card-carrying NJHS cynicism back then. It's also worth noting that despite my previous intentions, a huge element of this series is actually challenging my previously held notions about what I think and feel about total drama. Especially the Revenge video, which was mostly about looking past the growing pains of a new cast and appreciating the season for what it actually is. But the main reason that I don't really believe in that initial story anymore is that just over a year after Pacateo Island came out, we got the Redonkulous Race spinoff. In that season, frankly, disproved all the inflammatory shit furious little toddler Switchy was itching to say about how hard the show fell off. Spoiler alert, despite the fact that the Redonkulous Race is canonically a whole different show in competition from Total Drama, it is a refreshing return to form for me. If Pacateo Island was the salt being applied to the open wound left by All-Stars, the Redonkulous Race was the soothing ointment applied afterwards. Even though it still struggled with the lack of sass and zing in its dialogue that we'd lost after World Tour, it gave me hope. It brought me joy, even with Leonard being a character. Then the show went quiet for 3 years and it came back with a baby show spinoff. Ah! The decision to pivot to Dramarama definitely wasn't suited to my taste, but even still, I think the Redonkulous Race proved to me that the show didn't have to be doomed forever. It gave me newfound optimism that Fresh TV hadn't lost sight of what had made their show so special, at least so special to me, and Total Drama did have the potential to find its footing in the future.
And, all things considered, I think I was right. With Redonkulous Race in the reboot, Total Drama's history feels to me a lot less like a significant linear decline, and more like a show that kinda lost a little bit of luster after the first couple of seasons and had a pretty significant dip at one point, but otherwise stayed pretty good. As a result, it's become easier for fans, or at least me, but I would wager I'm not alone, to look at these much less beloved moments in the show's history without the same amount of contempt that comes with the "Total Drama has fallen" mindset we used to have, which I guess is a good thing. And with that being said, here's the key question. Is Total Drama Pacateo Island as bad as I thought it was when it first came out? No. Do I like it though? No. Not really.
I've spent this video talking about a lot of things like the wonky pacing, underutilized setting, lack of meaningful conflict resolution, and more. And it's been fun and enjoyable to get into the weeds about all this, but let's call a spade a spade. Or in this case, my biggest problem with Pacateo Island, my biggest problem with Pacateo Island. It's the cast. Everything that I dislike about this season is inextricably linked with the fact that this is the cast that was decided on. These are the lovable bunch of misfits that we have the privilege of watching compete for the million. Honestly, although I've gotten used to saying that over the last decade, there's still a small part of me that retches at the thought that this is what we were given for the follow-up to All-Stars. It feels like a sick joke.
It really kinda stinks chalking it up to the cast alone, because I feel like there's so much more that can be said about this season past the generic, Leonard is stupid and Dave is whiny. But at its core, that's what it all comes down to. The fact that these are the characters who serve as the basis for this character-driven show is nothing but a ball and chain on this season, and any idea it might have, no matter how good it is bogged down, save for a handful of scattered jokes.
You know, it's not just that the show decided to make gimmick characters. Weirdos, oddballs, misfits, and mavericks can be a lot of fun, and provide a lot of contrast to the more quote-unquote normal characters more fit to be audience surrogates. And as I said, they'd had a good track record with these kinds of characters up to this point, at least in my opinion. I know I've been pretty hard on a lot of these characters conceptually, but for what it's worth, I think a good few of them, in isolation, had decent potential. Some of them actually do get pretty fun at points. With a more complementary cast and a completely different comedic writing style, I think a good few of the Airhead characters would be noticeably more enjoyable, definitely a lot less annoying.
Here's the thing though, and I know we all know this, but it bears repeating. We don't get that. Characters like Leonard, Max, and Ella are not weird deviations from the norm. They are the norm, and I think that's kind of a problem.
Call me syndrome all you want, guys, but if everyone's a kooky, one-dimensional weirdo, then nobody is. Having these weird stereotype characters only bounce off of one another as opposed to, like, characters who actually have internal monologues and the ability to visualize how they would feel if they hadn't eaten breakfast or lunch doesn't do the show any good. The lack of serious personalities tied up with the narrow rigidity of so many characters' aggressively pigeonholed niches creates, in my opinion, both the most annoying and the most surface-level character dynamics Total Drama has ever seen. And trust me, it's not like there's a lot to choose from either. The vast majority of characters only have one or two meaningful dynamics, and a couple of them literally have none. Topher's kind of a big example. He just doesn't do anything of note with any other contestant despite making it 8 episodes in. Even Leonard is a part of richer character dynamics than Topher, as much as I don't like them.
One counter to this point, though, that I feel like kinda needs to be addressed is that occasionally I've heard people say that there's no real issue with the Pocketail cast because Total Drama has always had gimmicky stereotype characters. I think for a lot of you, hearing that might make you be like, no, but there is kind of a similarity. It's like the similarity between a butter knife and a chainsaw, but it is a similarity.
Since 2007, the show has always had cute little taglines to describe its characters. You know, Bridget is the surfer girl, Harold is the dweeb, Lashana is the sister with tude. Moving on. There is a point to be made here, but when people act like this is the end-all be-all refutation of the criticism of Pocketail, I just can't take it seriously. To put it semi-bluntly, Surfer Girl is a much more flexible character foundation to build off of when it comes to writing a story than guy who aggressively falls in love with every single female he interacts with in a cartoony infatuation scene. I think you can fit Surfer Girl into more situations naturally. It also helps that the Surfer Girl was able to evolve into a character separated from just her hobby. It's not like she prattles on about her paddling technique every time we see her. The majority of the Gen 3 cast members, conversely, hardly ever break out of their weird gimmicks, which is a huge detriment to how much enjoyment I can get out of the show. As a matter of fact, a lot of my favorite moments in Pocketail come from either jokes being made about the characters with little to do with their basic concepts, or characters turning into actual characters as they distance themselves from their blueprint.
At this point in time, I think this show really undervalued the importance of including characters that could be seen as reasonable audience surrogates. This season has very few, to the point that they make a joke out of it with the quote-unquote normal Dave being driven nuts by his loony bin entourage and eventually becoming just as crazy, if not crazier, than the others.
Audience surrogates are so important for shows like this to have, and it was a huge blunder, I think, for Pocketail to have so few of them. Just as an example, I think the fact that Damien is so popular among fans of the reboot despite constantly being sidelined is a good reminder of how useful these characters are. In a fictional world where so few people both understand and respect the most basic social conventions and also have even the slightest consideration for personal hygiene, being a slightly nerdy normal guy feels like a fucking superpower. I've seen a lot of people tell me that Pocketail Island is a season that gets better as you get further in, and I think in a very general sense, I kind of agree. The first episode is unmistakably one of my least favorites in the show's history, and I don't think there's been any other Total Drama episode that made me lose my temper the way it did when I was a kid. Not even Sunday Muddy Sunday. Something about those first 30 seconds or so still gives me flashbacks of like seeing these overly kooky characters for the first time and having my heart plummet at the thought of this is Total Drama now. The unbridled despair I felt from that initial viewing still echoes in my mind, and for what it's worth, I don't have the same reaction to the later episodes. Mostly.
Where I find myself disagreeing with the better towards the end opinion is that I think that although the season does become more likable after the first few episodes, around episode 9 or so, ooh, it drops hard. It dropped like Jenga sales did in 2002.
See, for me, once the show trims the fat in its cast and a lot of the super generic lowbrow humor is lessened, the writers have more time to actually establish these characters and get a bit more crafty with how they progress. Even figures who really wore my patience thin in the first couple of episodes start to get more likable, although as I said earlier in the video, that's also probably just me adjusting my amount of patience for the show. Regardless, it's around this time the show actually starts getting, dare I say, fun to watch. But it all comes tumbling down, tumbling down, tumbling down. Once the show is forced to like right conclusions to the stories it tries to tell. Even past the torturous Dave and Sky fiasco, they just don't seem to land on their feet with anything other than Jasmine and Sean, at least in my opinion. The best we can really hope for is an interesting arc that runs out of steam, like what we got with Scarlet or the twins. I guess some people would argue that abrupt conclusions are kind of baked into the format of total drama, and to an extent I agree. I've made that very argument before, in fact. But it's really been taken to a new extreme these past couple seasons. The show genuinely seems to think we get some kind of catharsis out of seeing characters get sent away through these baby's first cartoon slapstick exit methods. So much so that they started fast-tracking the elimination ceremonies just to get to it as soon as possible. And they play it off as a joke because Chris hates the campers so much and finds them so annoying. I sympathize with him in this case, but I certainly did not in All Stars or Revenge. It's not fun to think about, but Katie having a more sincere elimination than basically any total drama character after 2010 is stomach-churning. Because of this, for me, Pacateo is a mid-loaded season. It starts hitting a stride when the worst of Team Musquash are cut out of the picture and Ella starts being entertaining, but then she gets eliminated and all the plot lines either peter out or crash and burn. Especially the final couple of episodes. After Max and Scarlet are gone, the show feels like it's tired of existing. The finale is just pitiful to me.
Anyway, I've been complaining for a long time now, so I think it's time to try and find a positive spin. Just find one, somewhere. Something to say that doesn't make me look like a total wet blanket.
Well, first of all, this is probably the first season that benefited from being restricted to 13 episodes. I know I complained about it earlier because it still leads to a bevy of pacing issues, but I think this season works better only being a few hours instead of several, which makes it quite unlike Revenge and All Stars, which I think would have been much more interesting given more time. I know it's harsh, but I don't see enough potential in anything Pacateo tries to do for it to benefit from that treatment. With all other things being equal, I can only imagine a 26-episode Pacateo Island as being some sort of terrifying Lovecraftian behemoth. 13 episodes isn't good, but it's definitely a small enough commitment that I can rewatch this season whenever I go through the whole show again without too much turmoil. Another thing I will say about this season is that I think at its best, it's a bit funnier than All Stars. The character gimmicks that are put on display, as I said, do a lot of damage, but there are a few points where I think the writers show off a bit more wit than usual and actually write some dialogue that feels clever. It's appreciated. I also think the artificial island plot twist is pretty good altogether. There are still some total drama isms about it, and I think they probably could have done a little bit more with it, but it's fun to see this show actually try and play with your expectations. We don't get that very often. Also, as I've said a million times, Jasmine and Sean stumble a bit, but end on pretty good terms, and a reminder to me of how fun this show can be when it dares to show a little bit of heart.
In general, the season has become more and more palatable to me over the years as I've gotten older. As a kid, I had a hard time seeing any light or value in this season, just because everything about it felt so rotten to the core. It was a very reactionary opinion, I'll be totally honest. I think nowadays, it's a lot easier to just enjoy the things you can with the season, especially since we have enough hindsight now to see how Fresh TV took the feedback they got in season 5 and applied it in the future. At least when they got the chance to. They kind of got sidetracked with the baby show for half a decade.
I've speculated about the show taking the criticism it got over All Stars and Pacateo in the past, but I'm happy to announce that I was right. Or at least in the case of one person, I was right. Terry McGurran has brought up how he thinks he went too over the top with the Gen 3 cast and lost sight of the important role played by more earnest characters. And I sort of have mixed feelings about him saying that, because on one hand, it's vindicating to see people who worked on the show acknowledge and actually apply criticisms that I've lodged, but on the other hand, it makes me feel bad for complaining about this all video. I mean, they've learned their lesson, but I'm not a professional cartoon complainer because people want me. I'm a professional cartoon complainer because people need me.
That reminds me of something. You know, as a kid, I think I really overestimated how oblivious the people who worked on this show were. Here I was fantasizing about making a scathing YouTube video where I castigate Fresh TV for their careless decision making with the most obnoxious, I haven't hit puberty yet, but I know how your show should be run way better than you do attitude about the whole thing. And I had it in my head that if I told them that Pacateo Island had too gimmicky of a cast, it would be like news to them. Rewatching this season several times has taught me that that is not the case.
I think they knew all too well the benefits and drawbacks of what they had gotten themselves into. Suffice to say, the fact that they made a bonus clip where Chris and Chef talk about how rigorous their audition process would be for the new season, only to accidentally destroy all the tapes save for 14, leads me to believe they knew this cast was gonna garner different impressions than usual. They're literally telling us that at least in canon, the 14 contestants chosen for Pacateo Island were chosen by complete random chance, entirely divorced from any meaningful discretion on behalf of Chris, Chef, or the producers. If nothing else, they were definitely aware that they were going in a new direction with these characters.
It's honestly a huge shame that All Stars and Pacateo Island were made around the same time. I imagine that if Fresh TV had the time to consider the abundance of criticism they got in All Stars, they would have nipped a lot of habits in the bud as they recoup before the next season. And I can't help but wonder what would have been different about the show if that were the case, especially with the improvement I think it made in Redonkulous Race.
I doubt it would have been totally different, to be fair. We still probably would have gotten a new cast because I honestly think Big Bad Cartoon Network were the geniuses behind that brilliant idea, but I think they might have not been as brazen with the gimmicks as they ended up being, which would have been nice. Having said that, it still probably wouldn't have saved this season, at least for fans like me. I know this is harsh, but I think Pacateo Island's fate was effectively sealed when they decided on making a 13-episode season with a 14-person cast and stuffing said cast with a guy who's convinced he's a wizard, a girl who's convinced she's Snow White, a guy who's convinced he's a Wish.com Dr. Evil, and a future Olympian who's convinced she's a good person. Okay, ignore that last part. It was just too good an opportunity to pass up. Sky is just a bad communicator and probably shouldn't have let him on at the end, but Dave was in the wrong. Maybe there's a way they could have made these characters work. I said this in the episode 1 review, but I think that would have required the show to be, how do I say this? Funnier. Like, a lot funnier. I think for me to look past how goofy this cast is, the show would have to be funny enough for me to overshadow the many, many areas this season neglects. And in all honesty, I don't think this show's writing has ever been clever enough to hit that mark. It would have to be brilliant. And as much as I love this show, it's never gotten by on humor alone.
And honestly, it's a bit disappointing to admit that that's my main criticism with Pacateo. For a season that I considered unequivocally my least favorite for years and years, it's annoying and unfunny seems like a pretty light complaint compared to, say, the issues people usually have with All Stars. But as long as I can remember, All Stars has never ground my gears in the same way Pacateo Island did.
It's definitely weird. From the look of it, All Stars seems to be on the receiving end of a lot more criticism, especially among the Cartoon Network adults of the world. I've seen people say that despite Pacateo's cast and humor, All Stars is objectively worse in terms of writing. But in as much as I take the term objectively worse seriously with regards to cartoons, which is basically not at all, I'd say Pacateo Island is well into All Stars' league of sloppy writing choices with all its seemingly unfinished arcs and its plot that's more aimless than a Pokemon NPC. We're definitely trading blows with Courtney's list. My impression is that people generally take All Stars' writing faux pas a lot more to heart because they affect characters that are much more pivotal to the show's identity as a whole. I think Duncan's decline cuts a lot deeper to fans than Dave's, for example, me included. For a lot of people, they'd rather see characters they don't care about get shafted than characters they do. And that's fair, and it makes total sense.
But admittedly, that mindset doesn't apply to me, or at least it didn't historically. It's embarrassing to profess, but I think I'd still rather watch the season with the characters I know. Just because I know them. Ugh. It's occurring to me that I'm part of the problem. You know how all the biggest movies these days are sequels and reboots that are terrified of trying anything new? Yeah, that was me. You can churn out total garbage for me, and as long as there's a familiar set of faces on it, I'll tune in.
That being said, I think the question of which I prefer between these two half seasons is more contested than ever. I went out of the All Stars review with a lowered opinion of the season, which honestly was a first for this series, and it could very well be the only time, because honestly, Pacateo Island has grown on me a bit while making this video. As I've mentioned several times, I find myself able to look past a lot of jokes I find tiresome and enjoy the things I can more than I used to. There are a good few characters that I've come to appreciate more throughout the viewings I did for this video, and it's always worth saying, Even with the bowel movements, cannonballs, and crayon lists, there's always something deeply endearing about the experience of clone stamping and motion tracking a wall on a TV show to display furry art. You kind of learn to appreciate the little things, and Pahkitew Island has little things to spare. Because of that, there's a part of me that really doesn't want to be mad at this season. Pahkitew Island is like the TV show equivalent of a really dorky person who followed you around in middle school and didn't know how to take no for an answer and just annoys the hell out of you because they're constantly trying to make you laugh but suck at it. And whenever you wanted to tell them to stop talking or go away, some uptight classmate or teacher starts finger wagging you over it, saying you're being needlessly mean because although Pahkitew Island is excessively annoying and constantly overstepping boundaries, they mean well or something, so they're not actually doing anything wrong. It's frustrating, but maybe there's a little bit of truth to that. Leonard hasn't killed anybody. Rodney hasn't killed anybody. Dave probably would kill somebody. The Pahkitew Island cast is also the only one that's ever outwardly made a statement in support of anti-bullying. All in all, if you're able to shrug off a lot of the cringeworthy humor, kudos to me for avoiding using that word for 4 hours, it's a pretty inoffensive season. I think it still leaves a lot to be desired since I find its narrative pretty shallow and uninteresting, but it's really not the seasonal rot, shark jump, rise and fall of total drama catastrophe that I treated it as during my childhood.
So, with that being said, I think I hold Pahkitew Island in much higher regard than I used to. At the present moment, I think I like it pretty much as I do All Stars, which isn't that much, but hey man, most improved, I guess. In that way, it reminds me a good bit of Revenge of the Island, because that was a season that I also warmed up to while making a video on it. Though, I think there's still a looming darkness here that was not prevalent in the Revenge video. The end of the Revenge video was kumbaya shit. It was about peace, love, and understanding there. That video might as well have been a drum circle. Here, however, a storm's brewing. We're deep into the dark switchy arc. So, I gotta come forward and admit that although I think I've warmed up to the season and roll my eyes at how testy I was about it back when I was a kid, I honestly can't blame my past self that much for how I felt. Because this season, to me, despite many of the troubles being alleviated in the following years, was all the worst possible things at the worst possible time.
Watching the post-World Tour seasons of Total Drama was scary for me as a kid. From the moment they replaced the Gen 1 cast, I feared that a lot of things I love about the show would never be the same. The humor felt like it had dropped off, the episode count had become shorter, and the characters now felt a bit deflated. There were still things I liked, but I saw the show in a fallen state, and although I've warmed up to it over the years, I still think it doesn't hold a candle to the first 3 seasons. But then, a light at the end of the tunnel. An all-star season was on its way. It gave me a bit of hope, but that hope quickly diminished in the first couple of minutes when the show tried to tell me that Courtney and Duncan weren't dating when he cheated on her. The rest is history. Vomit Sunday Shark Mal. The light at the end of the tunnel, as the saying goes, was a train. And that train wasn't a single car, there were 2, and the second car, to me, was even worse. I know I've used the term double down already, you're probably getting sick of it, but I kind of need to literally double down on using it. Because the way Pahkitew Island just takes all the big criticisms that were flung at Revenge and All-Stars and literally turns them up a notch astounds me. We hear you guys loud and clear, so that's why we destroyed Camp Wawanakwa and decided to replace the cast with predominantly gag characters with little to no actual emotional depth. It's, I don't think they heard us loud and clear. It almost strikes me as knowing, intentional self-sabotage. It's like the self-portrait of Total Drama seasons. For the record, Island is freewheelin' and World Tour is blonde on blonde. Revenge is John Wesley Harding, and the reboot is Blood on the Tracks. Actually, no, it's more like Time Out of Mind.
The main thing I've criticized about this season is the new cast, and to be fair, I think at its core that's the main issue I have with this season. But there's an element that I would argue is just as important to why this season bothered me so much as a kid. It's because Total Drama, at this point, seemed almost fixated on discarding any reminder of its past.
Maybe that sounds like a weird criticism, but think about it. They destroyed Wawanakwa in canon, sort of implied a bunch of the most beloved characters and Sam and Sierra died, and started anew about a year later on a new island with a new cast with 0 ties to the previous seasons. While Revenge of the Island and the reboot made an effort to pass the torch between the characters with several cameos and callbacks, Pahkitew did no such thing. It's the most isolated any season in the show has felt, and watching it at the time, as I said earlier, was downright scary. I love this show. I loved its characters, and it seemed like I was never gonna see them again. And I was right, unless you count the alternate universe babies and a couple of cameos. Additionally, pretty soon after this season came out, we learned the next Total Drama installment would not be Total Drama. And although, as I said, that ended up being a blessing in disguise, it was a compelling reason to dial up the true dark, switchy Total Drama doomerism. It felt like Total Drama was sick of itself, and that broke my heart, as pathetic as it sounds. I know a lot of you are thinking this is all a very personal and biased reason for having such a vendetta against this season. That rhymes. But looking back now, I'm reminded of how all the signs at the time pointed to Total Drama only becoming more gimmicky, more shallow, and more annoying. Hashtag just my opinion. And although I was wrong, well, at least I was for the next season, and then we had the baby show, I think the kid version of me made a decently educated guess.
It's bittersweet, because although the changes the show made, or allegedly had to make because of network interference, I'm just speculating, made me want to go postal as a kid, there's a part of me that's really glad it happened. Because, truthfully, without the smoldering disillusion that I felt in the aftermath of Season 5 of Total Drama, I don't know if I'd be sitting here making this video. I mean, I'd probably still be doing something on this site, but I wouldn't have amassed the Total Drama guy reputation I love and hate so much, because the show never would have let me down enough to inspire me to talk about it online. But here I am, with tens of thousands of subscribers, almost entirely because of this show, as reticent as I usually am to admit it, and in that sense, I'm kind of grateful to Pacateo Island, because I don't think I'd have ever taken the plunge on that first 2-hour video about this show were it not for the pessimistic fall of Total Drama narrative I had crafted in my head as a kid, stubborn and short-sighted as it was. It's not just about the numbers, by the way. There are so many people that I've met through my strained love for this show. I've made lifelong friends and collaborators whose companionship I treasure. I've been given opportunities I would have never even dreamt of. And frankly, it's all because this show I cared about so much had a bit of a habit of ruffling my feathers. I don't know where I'm going with this. It's just weird to think about how much I honestly have to thank this show for. I mean, I think I could have made a name for myself talking about a lot of things, but I'm really glad it ended up being Total Drama. Total Drama, despite what 20 hours of me complaining might imply, is a wonderful show, and although it's for selfish reasons, I'm kinda glad it is the way it is. It didn't become what I think I wanted it to become, but it's fueled a passion of mine for years and years. And as a result, even the dud episodes still mean a lot to me. So, I don't know. When life gives you lemons, I guess. Anyway, I'm not usually good at saying this, but thank you guys so much for watching. Every view means the world to me, and making this series has been one of the most meaningful things I've ever done. Also, like always, I've made a separate unscripted video on my other channel, Switch 2e, where I do a tier list of the characters. Not to be confused with Switchy 2. Switch 2e and Switchy 2 are different things.
What is this guy talking about?
Is there something wrong with Tyler? Why are you blushing? Why is he like that?